No reason to even do that. So if we could go around, maybe get some names, what company you're with, and from 1 to 10, where are you at with racks? If we could start over here.
Sure. My name is Abiola. Abby. I work for AV Luxury Design. In terms of racks, I've done network racks for networking, but I would say, put me down to 0 for this. Right? I don't know why I don't know, so happy with my thing.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm Victor Santiago. I work for a school, Trinity School. I used to do racks way back when they didn't look like this. So I'm curious to see how you guys cable manage and stuff like that. It's been a long time, so I'm going to learn something.
So when's the last time you touched a rack?
To actually build one?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You don't want to go there.
Nice. No, it's good.
It's when there were server racks, and that's when 2004, 2005.
So it's exciting. It's been that long. It's exciting again. It's something new, fresh. That's great. How about yourself?
Yvonne, company of Caesar Services. Been doing racks on and off for the last 10 years or so. So looking to learn a lot more.
So from 1 to 10, where do you think your rack ability is?
Let's say like a 5 or 6. Just exposure is really kind of my limiting factor. I've done some things in kind of the network space, kind of rack server rooms, and just kind of AV racks in general, but haven't really kind of had a formal training per se. So I'd like to get myself a little bit more familiar with it.
So more commercial, but no residential.
Residential as well, just equipment's residential. I don't necessarily conform to a standard per se. So I've taken what I've seen, best practices from what I've seen people do in the industry, and really kind of fine-tune it to what I'd like to see and make sure that I can manage the system.
Do you have a senior tech? Are you the senior tech at your?
I like to build the racks out.
Okay.
Myself. I have a standard that I typically like to show when I'm showing people what our racks what I want to try to accomplish with the racks. And that's pretty much what I try to teach other people that are helping me out. But I'm primarily doing the rack builds myself.
Interesting. And yourself?
My name is Pedro. I work for Graphic Security. We install racks with cams, NVR, switches. Daily basis, pretty much.
Nice. But mainly security or audio video? Mainly
security, a little bit of everything.
Awesome. So do you build racks yourself? Nice. So from 1 to 10, what do you think your rack ability is? 6, 7. Confident. Nice. I appreciate that. And yourself?
My name is Jay. I'm working for security. We do racks on almost daily basis. Audio, video, everything.
Okay.
We're here just to learn a little bit extra techniques maybe out there in Army. It's always something new to do.
Nice.
That's what we're here.
Nice.
What do you got to offer?
Hopefully we can give you something you can learn something. So from 1 to 10, where do you think you sit?
With racks?
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 17 years, so I'm
good. So 10.
7, 8.
7, and you're modest. Good for you, brother. No, good for you. Good.
That's a 10 plus.
Yeah, you never know though. No. So, the more I learn, the less I know. It's weird.
Every rack is a new challenge.
Yep.
That's right.
Every job site is a new challenge because you try to do the rack perfectly, but then when you leave the job site, sometimes people change the cable box, change a few things. They make a huge mess. They're like, I didn't leave my rack like that. Somebody touched it. No, somebody did touch it because that's not my signature.
Not your signature.
We need signatures in the
Look
at that.
You know what? I like my things organized, and I like when you like my job, you tell somebody else about me.
Yep.
So do you have a process on how you do things?
What is it?
Do you have a process on how you do things?
Well, obviously, everybody do the same way. We label the wire first. What's going where? We measure what's going where. We decide in the rack what's going to be what stage of the rack, and we run the wire through it.
Nice. Does anybody give you elevations or anything on how to trim it out, or is it just here's the equipment and then you do it?
Well, I own the company, so nobody can tell.
Oh, nice. That makes it harder. Hey-o. So it's on you. You're the designer and all that.
Yes. Obviously, I do have an IT department who work with me, my under me. But we work as a team. When in this style line of business, it's very important with the start, with the end. You have to make a plan what you're gonna be.
Yeah.
So
How many employees you have?
maybe not.
Trust me, man. I'm a small company myself. I'm just happy I got guys working. So I get it. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
There's two of us here today.
Two.
Of us here.
That's huge. Not for nothing. That first step as a business owner to get your first employee, that is probably the hardest step. Even going 10, 12 and scaling out from that is way easier. That first person, your mindset is totally different. And then to actually maintain that first customer, like that first employee, that I always salute anyone that, if just even doing that, that's amazing, brother. That's hard to even sustain, to be able for someone to rely on you. And yourself.
My name is Gil.
Mhm.
Tech Solutions. I don't really do the rack work. My guys do it. I just here to see what you guys are doing, and I like seeing what After do. And then I'll see our guys, and we're telling them, hey, this is new stuff out there, and you should do this way, do it that way, and the follow instructions amazing. And they're really good guys. They know what they're doing. They have skills, amazing skills.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, do you have a process on how to trim out racks?
I'll leave it for them. They know what to do.
So you just give them the gear and they just do what they have to do.
We do home theaters, home automation, so it's almost always the same thing, same equipment. A few changes here and there, but most of the time it's the same things.
What's your control system?
Control form.
Nice. Good for you. Good for you. And yourself?
Michael, Signature Security. I'm just here to get a little more knowledge of rank building.
Nice. So from 1 to 10, where do you think you rate yourself?
Like,
the world. You know, Tony right there, he's another asset. Plus Vinny, they've been flown all over the world to do amazing racks, featured in all kinds of magazines. Follow them, you can see their insane work every single day. They're doing something crazy. Literally, I met Vinny in 432 Park. That's one of the most prestigious high rises in the city, and he was senior engineer working for another company. He was blessed to come back to work with me.
Made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
He knew it. I would kill him if he didn't come back. I was like, no, but oh, look at that. Look, how you doing? So here, come in. Can you please tell the group, tell them your name and what company you're with?
I'm Antonio from Stillman Electric.
Right. So building racks. One to 10, Antonio. How are you with building racks?
Pretty beginner level.
That's honest.
Yeah, beginner level.
That's honest.
Nothing crazy. I can put it together, but there's a lot to learn. So.
Facts. How about you, amigo?
Well, I haven't done any yet, no.
What's your name?
Louis.
Louis.
Yeah.
What company you with?
Stone
Spellman. So you never built a rack?
Not really, no.
No?
Just pretty much
Virgin.
now.
Virgin. Our first version. That's good. Everybody's excited. We
You
go
can
outside.
sit there, you can sit over there, wherever you want.
How about you?
Carmine, Stillman Electric.
Okay.
New to this.
New.
Yeah.
Wow.
Newbies.
If you guys don't know, Stillman Electric actually amazing electrical outfit. I'm blessed in their balls. I do a lot of work with them. Some of the most prestigious departments in the city. Man. They do all kinds of crazy things.
Very good friends of ours.
Yeah, they're good people. Friends in the room. All right. So as I said, there's a lot of presentation, a lot going up. I wish we had more time. We will have more of these, so please make sure you tell DSG and show some love to Legrand. But we'll go through the products. There's a lot to talk about, but we'll go through it fast. And we'll touch upon the things that are important to all of us and the things that we're not. We just will keep it moving. And I encourage you, talk. Let's talk together, talk to each other. This is an open space. If you are not sure, even if you're not sure of a word being said, the worst thing you could do is to stay quiet. Ask a question. I'm telling you, if you have a question, I'm more than positive someone else has the same question as hoping you ask that question. So just ask it. All right?
We're like
So
the
let's get
Planet
started.
Fitness of audio video, no judgment.
Yeah. No. Don't worry. We will make fun of you later. So we will not to your face. It'll be okay.
We'll,
All right.
we'll get you guys a little copy of the PowerPoint after the show. And also, everybody gets a 10% discount until Tuesday night. So if you want something from Mid-Atlantic, we can go through it with you. Let us know. We'll take care of it and give 10% discount for showing up today.
And whoever gets the biggest order gets a prize on top of it.
Yeah, what?
Yeah. No, whoever makes the most order for the highest amount, we're gonna
You get the rest of the pizza.
They got amazing shirts. All right, let's go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate everybody coming here, Myron and I. Again, what it says, we're gonna take you through, again, it's a PowerPoint. Not really gonna follow as much as can, like we said, make it interactive, we'll talk through it. The slides will create conversation, I hope, right? Just what it says, the standard and practices, everybody does it different, right? There's really not a wrong way to do a lot of this stuff. There's just things that you need to follow so that things, we'll go through it. Things that like thermal and cable management. So I'm going to kind of just touch on stuff. A little background for me. I'm Jay. I am the product manager for racks and accessories for Mid-Atlantic. I've been at Mid-Atlantic for 31 years. I started when I was 7 years old building racks. Made my way up to a product manager. So joking, but anyway, so yeah, I've been there. I've been in the field. I've done installs on commercial as well as residential. One of the things you'll realize with Mid-Atlantic is that we do not have a single product that wasn't created to solve a problem. We don't make a product because we think it's an idea. People like you that bring problems to us, right? I couldn't do this. I need to do that. How do I do this? That's where the products come from, right? We're all about the application. And, a lot of us product managers, not included, started as application engineers. We understood what you guys go through day to day, and that's how we design products. Story about our first product that was ever created for Mid-Atlantic. The owner used to work in a studio, and the bands would come in and record, and they'd bust out the speakers. So he created a speaker grill. He said, why do I keep reconing all these speakers? Why don't I create a product that solves the problem? that grew into, over $100+ million company in Middle Atlantic, and then built by Legrand, merged with Milestone, and things happened from there. So again, then we got Nyron, who's
Yeah, hi guys. Aaron here, product manager for the power category within Middle Atlantic. So obviously, when you think Middle Atlantic, you think racks, right? I mean, it's the core of a business. It's what made us the brand that we are today. But we've actually been in the power, whether it's power distribution units or UPSs. I mean, power distribution units, 20, 25, maybe 30 years in that business. UPSs, at least 10+ years in the UPS business for the AV market. So again, yeah, like you said, like every product that we come out with, I mean, we have over 200 SKUs, but every product that we develop, and even the new product that we develop, it's usually listening to you guys, trying to figure out what problems you have, how to make it easier to mount our power solutions in the rack or behind the display, to save you guys time, make it easy for you guys to service. So all those things go into consideration in building out the power.
So basically, we'll talk about, like I said, some principles and some standards and stuff that are out there that you guys can look to. Some of the things that we've learned doing these over the years. And again, I think you really touched on it. Like, it's not just about me and Nyron up here telling you guys stuff. It's about you guys talking to each other. And it's about us learning back too. So it's all about that. So a couple of things that we'll touch on. So one of the things that we've done, again. We've started an accessory business first, then built into the racks. Then we did the power. Now we do thermal, right? So we look at this as what we call the rack or the host, we call it. Because a lot of times it's not just a rack. It could be a credenza. It could be anywhere, right? There's other things that under table, things like that, right? That house equipment, so we call it a host. It's an AV foundation. And then basically what we did was we created what we call the system approach. One of the reasons why I said, why do I need a rack? Well, one of the things is you're able to do multiple things with that rack, being power management, cable management, and thermal management being important. Thermal is very important to keep the product up and running. Cable management is important to obviously make sure the product is working to its fullest potential, as well as making things serviceable later on. And then, power obviously is another thing. Without power, you're not going to do much. And then we'll touch on some structural, so the assembly and the mounting. Some of the stuff is pretty straightforward. We'll go through it, and then we'll touch on, we got a lot of resources on the website, white papers, things like that.
How many people are Avixa now?
Just familiar with
Avixa?
Infocom?
Anybody know what it is? Avixa? How about you do?
Not
So
6'5", but I
two
know.
people have an idea of something. How about Cedia? Anybody heard of Cedia?
Yeah.
2 people, 3, 4, couple? Anybody done a training with either?
Yeah.
You done? No one else? Yeah, you did a training. You did a training?
CD, I've done some.
You did it,
yeah.
Not for regular.
Okay, but you did a training. How was the training?
It was okay. It was only, a few hours when you were there, but it was good.
So yeah, if you look at CEDIA would really be on the residential side, Infocom or VIX is on the commercial side. Come February over in Amsterdam, those two combined, CEDIA and Infocom do a trade show. It's an ISE show in Amsterdam.
Largest in the world.
Yeah, everybody. So you have that commercial resident. I mean, them lines are really getting blurred these days, right? I mean, larger jobs on the residential side can be considered commercial, right? So, but they're two entities that are out there to help you guys learn. They have standards. They have a lot of stuff that they do for the markets, right?
A lot of free resources, a lot of classes,
Yep.
things you could take online, webinars and stuff, and a community nonetheless of other people just like you that, again, it's about the people you can meet to, leverage new jobs, new knowledge, things, kind of your ideas and learn from each other, why they're good. They're a good place to start to find others.
So I was lucky enough to sit on the first ever rack build standard that was done in 2018. They reached out to me, and I was on the committee with global people from end user to manufacturer, which we were installer, and we wrote the rack build standard. And we were only a year into it, and they were already asked for a rack design standard. So I ended up chairing that one. But a lot of that information also found its way into CEDIA. If you go into the CEDIA handbook, a lot of that same stuff. So, yes, commercial, residential, but it's a rack, right? A lot of that stuff is the same, right? It could be some codes, could be some of the things that makes it a little bit different, but other than that, it's really about the same stuff. So, and it was something that we always taught over the years, that system approach. So, kind of what that is. So, we always start with the rack, right? Everybody can design a great system. You can put it on paper. You can get it out, all your stuff. And, one of the things we said, you can't just put it anywhere, right? No thermal, no cable. A lot of that stuff's not going to work right? How you get your power in there and all that other stuff. So that's kind of always been our go-to-market is it's not just a rack. It's a place to house all this stuff, right? So, and it's done well. And I know you guys probably get a lot of questions, like seeing that rack as a line item. What is it doing for your customer? It doesn't really do much in their eyes, but what it's doing for you guys and what it is actually doing, it's making sure their equipment's up and running, making sure that it can be serviced. You're not paying 6 hours for somebody to come in, maybe an hour, right? So there's a lot of things that rack does for them. So some of the things that we'll touch on a little bit when it comes to structural, the assembly, right? Again, just really plan ahead. Outer panels, a lot of the stuff that we do, front door, rear door, side panels, tops, all that stuff comes off. You want accessibility, right? Rear support we'll touch on. And then some of the mounting things will go from, just simple as beginning at the bottom. We'll talk about space creep to the end, that serviceability, right? So you got that. So in the standards, what they asked for was just kind of a flow chart a little bit. And you got, like I said, I'm going to blow through a lot of these slides a little bit quick. But, again, if you see something you want to talk about a little bit more.
But understanding when we're going through this, something that you're not to cut you off, my apologies, but something that I know us as a company has made us more profitable is process. And I understand it's like, oh, it's residential. And a lot of us always feel, oh, it's always going to be a new way. We got to do it. Everyone is custom. Let me rest assured, I have done so many racks over so many years all over the world that is a lie we tell ourselves. You have to understand the process. There's stuff. This is where it needs to go. As long as you have the process of the company that everyone can repeat, and then, giving the average individual a little bit of sauce that they can put in to make it theirs. But that process equals money. And doing steps like this, understanding, making sure, and understanding you understand your workflow as a company to get these things can make what turns into a time suck. Because as an employer, a rack is like a Pandora's box because you don't know. I'm hoping I have X amount of hours and then that you guys are going to get it done in a certain amount of time in the reality. And then as the owner is like, oh, maybe I'm the only one who's going to touch it to make this done. And this is that fear a lot of owners have. But if you have this process, you can make what feels so out of control controllable. You'll understand what the monster is going to do, how it's going to play out. Then you're able to prepare for what you're not sure.
Yep. So I think we touched on it a little bit when you guys were going around about, laying things out and stuff like that. It sounds like a lot of this stuff is done. You get the product, you put it in. But if you're working off drawings and layouts and rack elevations is a good thing to have, right? It's not only for when you're building a rack, but later on that you have as built, so you know what was done if you have to go back there a year later. So there's a lot of good programs out there. We have an online one. There's D-Tools, which is a very...
Anybody use D-Tools? One person.
So you can get pretty deep with that, with cabling and stuff like that.
D-Tools is definitely a great tool. It uses Visio, and it'll create all the symbols and a lot of these, and you're just drag and drop. And then you can just interconnect the different schematics. I could not tell you how awesome it is. But there is a cost. You get what you pay for.
Yep.
It also makes the sales tool a lot easier. But again, there is a cost, and there's a learning curve to the whole process.
We actually swapped to ECAV, Symbol Logic, or Visio.
Okay.
D-Tools Cloud, which we present for our business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Each one is particular. Each one, like your business.
We had D-Tools System Integrator.
Mm-hmm.
We did like D-Tools really, although it's good integrated with D-Tools, but somehow it didn't come across good. So we swapped to D-Tools Cloud and we use Symbol Logic.
Works for you perfect.
Yep.
And there's a lot of other packages that do that. So I would tell you,
there's a bunch out there.
look out there. The market is only getting more full of different cool products that have these drawings. These elevations, they're important. The only thing is and maybe I'm wrong. And I've asked this the last group. Has anyone ever had a set of elevations that was true at the end? Even one person in the room? No, right? Maybe I'm the only one. No, right?
As far as elevations, what do you mean?
It's a
Like
good start.
any set of plans, have they ever been correct at the end?
It's always adjust at the end.
Yeah, but it's always right.
Correct.
Can anyone tell me at least one project in their entire life they've ever seen that? Right? I love because
I would
it's
say probably no, right? You know, you start getting into something changes. You could take a week and a half, all of a sudden that one piece of gear that you thought you had, you got to change that out. That changes everything. It could change the depth, could change the RU, right? Again,
but proper
it's a lot
documentation.
easier to do it in person than it is to draw it.
Oh yeah,
right? We know that. Like we deal with that as product managers, where the engineer goes, "Look, I drew it. It's perfect." Did you try it? Yeah. Well, how come this and this don't fit? Right? You know, it's when you physically see something, it's much easier, right? So
just a question, just not to take you off rails. As far as like a process perspective, is that when you typically have those adjustments, are you always by the end of the project, or are you also like providing a customer, giving them the finalized, like essentially kind of
the as-built at
the
end.
as-built,
Yep.
yeah.
It's completed, and after all adjustments, that way you know for documentation purposes.
I'm
Like,
charging
on site.
documentation by the item, so I understand. So I have a bill number per labor per item, so I understand that, and then that is able to compensate. But at the same time, because of the process that we have as a company, we mitigate any double action of anything, and how whatever, like any just kind of edibles of the time, just
Okay.
So another one of the flow charts, touch on that. So, again, planning ahead. Part of that can be done when you're doing your drawing stuff. A lot of times what you'll do is make sure you get all your gear there, make sure it's all there. You start looking at it. How am I going to do this? Get a game plan in place. It's even simplest things as like knowing where I need to set my rack rail. If I got a bunch of stuff and I know I'm going to put one switch in or a patch panel, right? I better remember to take my front rail, set that back 3 inches so I have room for cabling so my door closes. Because it's the little things like that just thinking ahead, right? And then also, what rail depth do I need, right? If I got something that's rear mounted, where does that rear rail need to be? It's a lot easier to do it when there's no stuff in there than to figure out when you get to that piece of gear and then try to get in there and adjust the rail. The other thing too is like that rear rail may not be used for rear mounting, but it's also used for cable management, right? What is the perfect spot for that cable management to be? Where's the depth of all my equipment? What you want to do is make sure you're cabling, and we'll touch on that when we get into cable management. You want that lace bar or that something else. You want to take that strain off the connector. You don't want the lace bar to be here and the piece of gear to be here. You want to try to keep that nice and close so you have nice connection off the back.
So like me and my partner here, we'll talk about it in the proposal. We'll talk about what's going inside of the rack, and then wait. So we start planning, like, how heavy is this rack going to be? How many amps? How many receivers? And then we start working on elevation. What draws the most heat? What can be stacked or what needs to be spaced apart? And then we start building everything in with spaces, like 1 or 2 use spaces. So in case something does grow or the client wants to add at the end, we can shift 2 things and make a new slot. Like, we start thinking about all of that stuff before we actually start building up.
Yeah, we look at probably about 20 to 25% extra in growth. So if you need, X amount of RU, you got gear, go 20%, 25% more, knowing that someday it's going to change or you can add stuff. We are in a world where everything that used to be 4 RU is now 1 RU, right? Everything's shrinking in that way. The other thing that we're seeing too, and we'll talk about that with small device mounting, it's not rack mount anymore. It's a box this big that does just about what a half a rack of gear used to do 10, 15 years ago. So, question for you guys, when guys building the rack, are you doing them on site mostly, or are you doing it in your shop?
Although
Both?
we should do it in shop,
Okay.
Did anybody do on site? No, anyone do them in their shop? You do them in the shop. You do it in the shop. Why do you do it in the shop?
Because we're more flexible with time, because we don't always have time to go to that job to be on site, but sometimes we have more time to be at the shop. Something we finish a job early, then we have everything there,
Yep.
and we have anything we need that we may not remember to bring to the job, a patch cable or something. We're at the shop, we have whatever we need. We get it all going, we wrap it up, and then we bring it. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes we do it at on site, but we try to do it at the shop.
What do you do about the weight?
We keep the heavy stuff on the bottom, and then we just have more than one guy loading it in the day.
It's not that easy, though. Like sometimes that's cool. That could be heavy.
Scary,
Oh, yeah.
scary weight.
Plus, not everything is mountable too. Not everything has ears to mount. Some stuff have to be on the shelf, and then.
And can you imagine what a corner of a rack will do to a floor in a high-profile location? Oh, it's weird. Like money spits out of it. It's like that was amazing.
No, but some situations I get it. You can do it on site. Some situations it's open, so you can do it in the shop and easily
Yeah, the
bring
guy
it
that
in.
usually does the right
All
thing.
depends
Tie
on-
wrap everything, make sure nothing's gonna fall, and once they take it to the job, to the site, it's just plug in.
I tie wrapped the
That's it,
rack
son.
into a U-Haul one time. By the time I got there, it worked.
Oh yeah.
Well,
From shifting inside, the rails actually bent, and we had to stretch the rack back out.
So
It
what we
was
actually,
weird.
what we actually did, we
That
laid
sounds
it
fun.
on its back. So there was no cable and anything coming through the back yet. It was
Gotcha.
just everything mounted.
nice.
And we laid it on its back, tied it up.
That's smart.
And that was actually fine.
Yeah.
And, it worked out.
You guys are tough over there, though, man. That's
I was at a shop probably 2-3 weeks ago, and it was pretty cool. They do a hybrid work. What they do is they put everything, the heavy amps and everything, run all their cabling. All they do is they unplug, take the amps out, and then that stuff gets brought separate. And anything like you're talking about, small device, things that are not on the shelf, right? The cabling's there, so then they can put that on the shelf, do their everything's pre-wired to the rack. So I mean, there's a lot of cool things you could do that way, right? But you talk about on the back, there's a thing called space creep. We get calls about it all the time because we get the call saying your rack, something's the matter with your rack. You guys screwed this up. This piece of gear doesn't fit in. Well, what happens is if you look at every gear that goes in that rack, even our blank panels, everything has an knob around. That's not exact fit hole of that rack screw that goes in there. There's play that can happen up or down. A lot of times with the weight, it goes down, but there are other times where if you start at the top and you start pushing everything up, or if you let everything drop down and you get to the bottom rack space, it won't fit because that's what it's called. It literally just that little bit will creep into the next space. So
what are you trying to say? Do you recommend it starting from the bottom?
we say work from the bottom up. Also, what you can do is lay the rack on the back.
Drake said I'm doing that too. Start
What's
from
that?
the bottom. Drake said that too.
hey, yo, but now I'm here, man. What's up?
He said that.
Yeah.
He did it.
No, but in reality, as well, what works is just leaving them a little bit loose, just so that there's a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, if you're not doing it that way, just knowing that could happen, right? And just a matter of loosening some rack screws up and then giving that play to get that piece of
I think you
gear.
just get I understand what you say, right? But I think from my perspective of viewing is I'd rather get a little bit bigger rack than what I needed because for future you can add more stuff and you can have more space between.
I don't think
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
having the same conversation. I agree with
So-
what you're saying. I think what we're trying to illustrate is that
Unless you're leaving
even
a
if we
space
just
between
use this much and you put in the gear and it becomes tight, at one point, if I build from the top and I just start throwing it in, by one point, this won't go in anymore. It'll be a little off because something is pushing something just so much. So that's what we're talking, not the size of the rack. So what we're saying, or what I said, was to loosen up the screws so that they wiggle a little. They were saying, build from the bottom up, but that was it's not so much the size of the rack, which I 1000% agree. Always the bigger the rack, the more money they will spend. I'm telling you, it works every single time. What I mean? No joke, right? Look at that, man. I sell everything.
For two more. Yeah. Easy. Mike, how much?
No. What? No, they're mad. Why didn't you fill it, Mike? Like, but working through it, that's kind of more what we're talking about. You will find that, but there's different things that are going to create stuff like that. The feet under the gear. You ever seen that? The little feet and everything, where you'll have something that's rack mountable. There's have some feet. Taking off stuff like that. Look through the rack. Be nice to the tomorrow you. Because remember, tomorrow, that's you. So do the things to make your life easy, pulling them out. And they make amazing custom shelves. Have you ever used their custom shelves? Where you can, if you haven't, you're wasting time. I'm telling you. So what
it
we'll
was-
do.
Yeah, it was designed for really a lot of consumer gear that's not rack mountable. So what you're saying is a lot of times you'll get a piece of gear that has feet on it and it has a pair of ears in the box. Typically, if you're using those ears, you're going to put it in a rack mount. The feet, what'll happen is it should stay within 1 3/4 increments, right? That unit itself with the ears should fall in that 1 3/4 increment. With the feet on it, it doesn't. The reason why they give you feet is because if you're not using rack ears or if you're putting it on the shelf, right? But what happens is there was a lot of consumer gear out there that are used in all these jobs that don't have rack ears. They were used to sit in the old, stereo cabinets and stuff like that, and they're all different heights. We custom cut out the faceplate for a Sony, whatever, CDPC or whatever it is that's not rack mountable, and we make that rack mountable, and it gives you a clean face that's in exact rack space, and that helps you with thermal later on.
But not just one thing, like say
think
an
the-
Apple TV and a Roku. Like you can start getting creative. They'll cut
because
them
the smaller
out.
stuff,
That
you can put a few of them on one shelf.
And a lot of people don't see the importance, but it does at the end when you're trying to vent your rack. When you leave those spaces open, that's pockets of air that's coming in from where it shouldn't be coming in, and that would messes up the whole flow of how the air should circulate through the rack. So the custom plates actually, not only do they look cool, they actually help with keeping the rack, warm, temperature wise.
Yep. Yeah, because really about we'll touch on rack the airflow a little bit later, but yeah, totally. So just the most common thing I've seen, I'm going to save time. I'm going to put 2 rack screws in. And what I do is I'm going to put them in a caddy corner. Well, what happens is a lot of these gears, when you do that, it tweaks the chassis, which then tweaks the motherboard and tweaks everything else inside the electronic. Everything's basically got some sort of board or something that's soldered or anything like that. So when you start to do that, you can actually tweak out that chassis by doing it. The most important rack screws are the bottom 2, right? That's because basically cantilever is going to make that top go up into it. So then you want to do 2 at first, make sure everything's good, do the 2 bottom. Then you can go back and do the rest. But really just looking at, some of that cantilever stuff. So next here. So we talked about the weight, 50% of the weight in the lower third. This is not something that we made up. This is something that we have to abide by for UL. So when we do weight testing, that is basically what has to happen with UL. They require it. How the testing is done. It typically was 4 times the weight load. So if I had a rack, like that rack there is 3,000 pound UL listed. We had to test at 12,000 pounds. That was pretty impossible to do to get 12,000 pounds in there. And typically what has to happen is that's a 1-minute test. UL comes and witnesses it. We actually have them sit overnight because we didn't want to spend 4.5 hours trying to figure out how to get 12. We had pieces of sheet metal hanging off the top. The good thing is now there's a little bit of different way to do it. It's about 1.5 times and you have to tilt it 10 degrees. So they made it easier for us because good thing we're a steel company because we were pulling pallets of steel off. Like, where do we get this weight from? It was pretty fun. But again, that lower 1/3, when it comes to thermal, sometimes what happens is you want to keep the hottest piece of gear at the top, right? So that the air gets out quick because heat rises. Well, what's usually hottest is the amplifier, which is then usually the heaviest. So there's things that you have to just make sure that it contradicts itself a little bit, but that's just one of them. But again, that 50% in the lower third.
Yeah.
And if
I usually put amplifiers, especially heavy ones, middle and down.
Yeah.
And then like UPSs, dead bottom.
Correct.
And then I try to balance out my rack like that.
Yeah.
If I can push the rack from the top
and
it's not tilting, I know I'm good.
That's a perfect example. You got heavy weight, you got on casters, especially something like these racks over here. They're not deep, right? You go, where do you push from? You push from the top. You don't want to just tilt that.
because you'll feel it when it has some good weight in it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Once it gets going, you're not grabbing it. Like it's gone. The minute it's going, it's gone.
No, you guys ever rode a big Harley, right? You get to that point, it's all nice and light. Once it goes here, that's it. Once it's past that point, you ain't stopping. You get your leg out of the way, right? That's exactly what happens with the rack. So ergonomics is another thing. I mean, again, it's something that you think, yeah, of course I'm going to think about this. Not everybody does, and just things to keep it top of mind. I got something that I turn on and off all the time. I got a display that I need to. I got a keyboard, right? I'm not going to put a keyboard down here. I'm not going to put something that I have to turn on and off the top of my rack where I can't reach it, right? Just ergonomics, right? And that usually think about that during the layout, right?
Like switches, patch cords and stuff. Why would you want to be down here with your switch at the bottom of the rack, terminating on your knees all day? I kind of put that eye leveler up. I'm short, so that's usually the middle of the rack and up.
He's honest.
Yeah, we talked about the cantilever. Small device mounting. This is something that we've been really battling for a long time, probably over the last 10 years. You guys have probably seen it, where a lot of the stuff that's out there is not rack mounted. You got to find a place for it. What this first started out as, we did a trip, went to about 25 integrators across the country. We've seen a lot of guys, they were taking small devices like this. They were probably a little bit different back then, but they were screwing in a 3/4 piece of plywood, painting it black, and screwing that stuff in there. By the way, you can't do that in a rack. You can't have wood. It's not fire rated, right? So you can get your hand slapped for that, but if you get a UL inspector sees that. So we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Maybe there's an idea there, right? So we looked at panels, and what ended up happening, third generation is what we call lever lock.
Lever lock?
Lever lock. So why we call it lever lock, there's a little lever on here that locks. So if you look on the side of the rack, I'm going to demonstrate there. It allows you to put these small devices on, and then it's serviceable. So this comes off, you have a service loop. Now I can get to my gear.
Now that's standard in every rack side?
It's standard in the BGR, the DWR, and SR. So we have about 3 to 4 series right now that have the ability to do that.
Do they have adjustable rack like that?
What's that?
Do they have an adjustable one?
Not an adjustable one, no.
It comes standard size.
Standard size, yeah. We have two
Two
heights. Yeah. So that's basically now. So that's kind of a tools thing. One of the other things too is a lot of the gear that you'll see. This is a nice one. It has all the little rack ears on it or the holes. You could put that on there and mount it on here with hardware. A lot of these do not have it. How do we do it? So we kind of came up with this cool little side clamp, we call it. Basically, it goes into that rack pattern, and then you put the gear down, and it ratchets it down like a wire tie. And you can snip it at the end, so if you don't have this, but you can also, it's a reusable. So when you push back, it's almost like a reusable wire tie. You push back on it, and you're able to, so without pushing on it, and then when I push back, I can lift it. But you can feel it clamps down. It's got a nice little rubber foot on it to do that. We also have a bunch of cable managers and stuff that go in that whole pattern. Again, it's a nice quarter turn. Clamp my stuff down and things like that. A lot of times you'll end up with double stick or using Velcro that has double stick. Rack heats up, rack gets cold. What happens to adhesive at that point? Comes off, right? You end up looking in your rack and you got about 13 things laying on the bottom of your rack with wires hanging.
And then think about it. The last thing you want to do is have something in the middle blocking air. So if you push it off to one of the sides, you're creating more of this trunk to push the air through it, which is going to keep the rack cooler. And then the fact that it's braced onto this, when you go to service it, in essence, you could build the tray outside of it and then pop the tray in a much easier way. Because these little parts, the little jumper, the this and that is like, I got to take this apart now. Like, I got to do what? So now it's that ease of use. And again, like, you look at it as like it's another thing to get, but it's a time saver. So this is metal.
Yeah, it's metal.
And you don't necessarily even need those. You can have them, but Velcro, tie wraps, there's a million different things that can get them. Bingo.
That's the serviceability is a thing that we've always got at top of mind, right? That's great. You can put it in there. You can load this stuff all up on the shelf, send it out to the job. That poor guy that's got to go out there and pull that one piece out, he's got to take 32 items out to get to it. It's like your new car, right? Trying to get to this one part under your hood, you got to take half the motor off to get it because that's how they build it, right? You have to work backwards. But we have that pattern on shelves, the lever lock series that goes on the side, things like that.
And don't get caught up by a part like a name, like, oh, it's supposed to do. I don't care what it's supposed to do. I'm going to do what it's supposed to do. I write the manual. You write the manual. You grab any of these parts, use your imagination. You will find solutions. Like, how many people have those little room boxes behind the TV that do video? And then we're like, where am I supposed to put this inside of the rack, right? So, everybody's seen these lace bars. So 2 offset lace bars makes a nice little scoop. You could put your device here and still have wires going through while it's still right on. How easy was this? You know? So if you screw it right here, kind of right in the back.
Front and the back of the rack, bro.
And say you have a device. You literally can just screw it in as its own little tray.
It's adjustable.
Oh, now you can put it anywhere you want.
You can get different sizes.
Yeah, different. Of course, these come with different offsets for whatever device.
Anything, a balance.
I throw. How many people do Crestron? Well, I do Crestron. The room boxes are huge NVX boxes. They go in there all day. I can hide a box there. Binary. Any one of these cool little boxes or the million little boxes we all are being thrown at here. And again, it's this. The illustration here is not just one thing. It's to be creative. There's a ton of little part numbers that do awesome things that save you time, because you know how much time and wasted material Velcro do it when you can buy something and be in and out and be on to the next thing. And that's what the amount of bracketry for these racks now is out of control.
So a perfect example, this one right here. You see one of those parts? We had a customer who would put this on there and took a blank panel and took it on top and cut it and put it across here. Used it as a little shelf. That became a new product for us. So if you look at this, it's basically this offset lace bar. If I go like this, with a pattern on it, right? So we took 2 items and put it together. Again, not doing a product that doesn't solve a problem, or again, all the stuff that you guys do, finding cool ways to do things with this stuff, right? As kids, you probably played with erector sets and all this other. You did all that kind. That's what this stuff ends up being, right? So.
And how many people are doing LEDs in their racks, right? And the pain in the butt it is to do all that. You see the light kit? This is the part number. This is it going in it. How nice is that? Right in the corner. How pretty is that? And you know how fast that goes in? And again, that's time saved. Because the quicker we can get off the site with an actual finished, amazing project, not just being in a rush to get off, but like finishing, like it's amazing. We're ready. These are the things. These are the little touches.
To get back to rack space, all of our rack really has a bracket and a number. If you look, there's 3 holes for every rack space, except for this rack, we put a square in the middle, but that's for some quick mounting, non-toolless stuff, things like that. But there is actually, they're not all equal. There's a dimensional difference between here and here and here and here, and that's your rack space. What's that?
Yeah, like a 1U.
Yeah, 1U. Yeah. So 1 3/4, right? There's manufacturers out there that are put a pair of rack ears on it with a couple holes in it and say it's rack mounted. If they're not following that standard, it's never going to work. Yeah, we see it all the time. We make 1/3 panels to fill up those mistakes. So, but again, just following that, just knowing that, look where that bracket is, right? And every 3 holes is a rack space. So,
and a lot of times if you get that one-off weird product, and even they have it, I've seen that with some receivers where they'll have a weird mounting bracket, and we all know it's not going to sit right. We'll find that their custom shelf will be better, because then they'll build it to the correct size with even venting spacing, and it goes in all clean, has nice little base. It kind of picked up where it comes all cleaner. So a lot of times their solution is better than what the manufacturer is giving you with the device. And it's not over the top expensive. It's actually very, very economical.
we have a lot of manufacturers that come to us to help them with the rack mount stuff. Again, they're focused on making that gear work, how it looks, and all that other stuff. They're like, you know what, you guys have been doing this forever, so they come to us. But just again, it's just got to look for the stuff that's out there. So, and it's seismic. I just want to touch on seismic a little bit. You guys may not see it. I mean, we're on the East Coast. A lot of it gets done on the West Coast. Commercially, 911 call centers, a lot of these other things, they are following seismic standards, even though there's no seismic seismic activity in the area. they feel that this is a way to make sure that if anything happens, a shake could be, anything. So they want to make sure. So most of the stuff that we do has a seismic rated. We get it tested and we sell the brackets and stuff like that. So basically, you would just have a PE physical engineer come and just look and go, yep, you're good. He signs off on it because he sees that paperwork. We actually paid an engineer to do the test. We do the test internally, and that's basically how it is. And there's different ratings. So we're zone 4. So that means, an essential product. So we're upper floor. So the zone 4 is the highest in the building, and it's essential product. So things like paging systems, fire alarm, all that stuff can be in there because they're considered to be essential. That's the stuff you don't want to go down during an emergency. So just something that we do. Rear rack mounting, right? Little thing you can do also with the lace bars. The biggest thing that we've seen and the biggest culprit is those one space switches that sit in the rack and they're sitting like on an angle. None of them are rack mounted. They're deep. They're shallow. They're only one RU, and they're back heavy. So for some reason, they just don't put rear ears on them. Don't understand why. But you can even you got rear rail, put a lace bar across. You don't want to put all that strain on it, right? Especially when you have all the cables coming off the back. Just something like that. And then a lot of gear that does need to be rear mounted. You'll see it has ears and stuff.
And if you only have the front rails, you can use the offset and come in from the front and kind of cradle it from the bottom.
Hold it up a little bit.
Because you'll see it that it can't seem to grab onto it, and the whole case will keep dripping more and more over time, like it wants to pull itself apart, and it starts looking ugly. No, honestly, you can see how it's like pulling itself. With that little lace bar, with that offset, kind of cradles it, keeps it nice and square, perfect all the time.
It does happen with us when we use those the head user ADRs, the 120 channels, the big ones. They're really heavy when you put multi hard drives. You put 4 screws in the front, okay, you're good. And then back is going like that.
Yeah.
You look and keep on going down.
It looks like it's gonna pull itself apart.
Yeah.
Scary.
It's a heavy unit. So.
But with things like that, as much as you could come from the front, especially if it had weight, I would put an additional set of rails in the back and really brace it from the back. The further back so that it's really held up, the better you're off. So it's just so that the entire thing is held on correctly.
Sometimes we have that situation where the rack is actually big, the NVR is not as deep. So the ears are very far away from the end of the NVR. So how you bring them close? What do you use to make it
closer? To get it closer? So typically it would be another set of rack rail in some cases. Or what you do is you look at that rear rail and see what location, because it's usually adjustable within a certain amount of space.
But that's if you're using one of these.
Yeah, but like a slim,
slims, we can't adjust the rail.
Correct.
Not the depth of it, but they sell a lot of times the rack ears. If you flip them, you can get some space from it, just the way you install them. So they'll want to install because it looks like an L, but if you completely rotate them, it'll push the bracket back. And also online, you can find like spacers to the rack, which will push them out. But then you have to screw in from the back.
But if you are using Slim 5, we do have a rear rail kit that's split. So you can do, like, if you got stuff in the bottom, you can put a third set of rail in the Slim 5 where it's adjustable. But yeah, it's tough when it doesn't. A lot of those ears are adjustable, like you said. And at that point, if you can't do it that way, best thing is take a utility shelf or something, flip it upside down from the back, and let it hold that.
You guys have such a solution, like example, when you have a box, like a rack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the metal's in the front and the metal in the back, where you put the ears. Now, my facility unit, if you're thinking about it, if the AVR is not too deep, like making out like an extra bar going that way, and then we allow you to put another bar in the middle, so it can allow you to adjust it.
So what we do have, you have a rail that goes from here to here. We have what we call a center bracket. I think it's a CSA. It's basically an L. It's an two L-shaped pieces that mount from the inside of the back rail to the inside of the front rail. And it's not a shelf. It's just basically an L that you would sit your gear on. So at that point, it's not a full shelf. So basically, it's got two. So if I've been looking at the rack, it comes down like this and it sticks out about like that far on either side, and I can sit that on there. So, and what that will allow you to do is sit it between the two rail or sit it behind the other rail. So
If
Got it.
something is that heavy, would you consider using a shelf to sit it on? Because it's
Not
still
always.
Only, it's still only screwed from the front. There's nothing in the back, but is it stronger than just mounting a piece of equipment?
So depending on so what'll happen is what I would suggest you go from the rear and do the shelf going upside down that way. Because if you take and typically that gear may be an exact rack space. The minute you put a shelf under it, you lost that whole rack space underneath.
But it happened, I see with the shelf, I should bend it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit, what you putting in there?
It does happen with the shelf bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it encroaches into the bottom space.
But I think it makes sense what you're saying. Put the NVR ears from the front and put the shelf from behind at the same level. So the
You'll-
back of it will sit on.
Yeah,
But you
you'll
flip
lose
it
that two
upside
rack
down.
I'll
spaces.
put it in the
Correct.
front because in the front, those two screws you already use it for the shelf.
Correct.
We're not gonna be able to get in.
Correct.
It's exposed out.
So yeah, that's a way to do it from the back because you're not always using every rack space in the back. That when you take you even take a regular utility shelf, flip it upside down. So you're using two rack spaces, but that bottom of the shelf is nice and flat, and it goes right underneath the back of that, and it gives you some extra support.
But again, in those situations, if you have a device, because even with that all being said and doing that, now think about it in the sense where this is the problem with all this. There is nothing that you'll do that will not affect something else. So now we put in this huge thing in the back. So now air is not, which was originally the most open area, is now blocked from flowing air, right? So didn't we just, that's counterintuitive to what we want. So again, we're thinking through where it's like, all right, that's not going to work. Maybe I spend a couple bucks, get them to make a custom shelf so that it is strong enough to hold itself in that correct. So where those dollars and the reality, the delta between doing this and that is nothing. So it's having the right tools, and they have the part numbers, they have the things to get.
So that's structural. We're gonna let Nyron take over, do some power, and then we'll get into cable management after that. So, any questions on structural or?
Who do we reach out to? Let's say we don't know one exists, so you show us a couple of unique pieces. If we don't know it exists, who do we learn about them?
So
DFG, go ahead.
I was gonna say a couple of things that we try to do is there's a campaign, and I'm pretty sure we're still doing it. It's like, did you know, or have you seen this? We have so many products that are lost, right? Again, you see the rack, this lace bar, and just all that stuff that we're talking about. It's hard to find. You'll see spots for that, like installer helpers, things like that on the website. We try to keep these guys up to speed. They may know what it is. Our customer support, right? We have a pretty good line how these guys go through. There's a tech support which knows the product really well, and each category has an application specialist that works through tech support. So I have Jason who works for Racks and Enclosures. He's been there a while. He knows all those little parts and pieces. Give him the scenario what you're trying to do, and then we'll try to work that through. So,
but go to the expos. I can't lie to you. Go to the CD Expo is amazing. Infocom, these trade shows, their booth is out of control, and they usually have free alcohol. So it really works out, right? Am I wrong? Am I?
Not wrong.
Used to be.
Not our group, but you get free alcohol at the event.
Trust me, these events are wild. No, but all jokes aside, their booth is pretty intense. And where it's really cool is that they'll have a lot of different racks built out in some pretty intense ways using the entire product line. And I'm how many racks was at the last trade show? Because it's you guys, it's an absurd amount of gear that they bring.
Yeah,
we try to, when they don't limit us, we try to bring like 4 or 5 racks.
Yeah,
at least,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
if we can.
Just us, we used to have a trailer and a half full of stuff. They were like, you guys got to stop. Now we're like 6 or 7 brands. Our toolbox was more than what they wanted us to bring. You know, we had to create double doors. Brought everything from the kitchen sink to do that. But
yeah,
I think, usually we have like 4 to 5 series of racks.
Yeah.
If we don't have it physically, we try to show it graphically.
But real quick on what you said, their website is pretty much categorized, so you'll find pretty much what you're looking for. If not, Mike made me a fan of get him on the phone. I call them, tell them what I'm working with, what kind of rack I have, and then they'll tell me, all right, give me a few. All right, this is what you need.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's great. Just like that.
Is there like a rack builder that's online as well?
So we have the 3D tool, which basically you can pick your series. There's about 7 or 8 series in there. You can do that. What's cool about that is it takes you through like the categories. So it'll say, outer panels. If you bypass that and go to rack rail or whatever, you can look on the side and say, you know what, that's not checked green. Let me go look. It's like if I don't go to the power section, it won't check it. If I pick a power strip, it says, hey, I got a green check mark. So it's kind of cool. It helps you. And what it allows, and even with the searches on the web, when you pick a rack, as soon as you do that size and depth, everything that's not compatible goes away. Especially, if you're on there, you want to see a door, right? You pick a 44 space rack, you're only going to see 44 space doors that work on that rack, right? So that helps narrow down your choices, but also the rack builder, the 3D tool does that as well.
You know what really helps? No joke. What has worked for us is become very, very friendly with these guys. Wait, who is your local rep? You should know your local rep's name. They should know your name. They should know who you are. You should be engaging in this with this person. You should developing a plan on how we are going to make this work. How do I find these parts? How do I become your champion? Because it's a two-way street. It's not all their fault. Some of it is yours. Some of it is all of us.
Marketing on all of it.
You're 100% right. 100% right. But a lot of people will agree with me here. When we call sometimes the sales reps and we try to explain them what we want, sometimes they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, they don't know.
They don't know. They don't
Because
understand
they're not as knowledge as well.
Yeah.
But they'll get you someone. And this is why
Yeah.
DSG is so special. Because we all know who Dave is. And if you don't, you should know who Dave is. Because Dave is a phone call away. He may not be in his room, but I know him very well. I know Dave gives a fuck. He cares more than anyone I met about all of us. He will go to bat. If he doesn't know, he's calling wherever he needs to find out. He is your champion. You need to be again, get engaged with the players. These are the people. Be engaged and use the product. You can't sell everything and expect people to help you. That's not how things work. Be a player. Be on the team. Learn the product line. Understand the part numbers. Understand the usage. And then you'll be successful. But to think we're going to do all this weird stuff one-off every time and be successful, that's not how none of this works.
All right, power.
All right, power. Let's talk power. So just, obviously every rack needs power, right? So just real quickly, what are you guys using for power right now? Like, who is your go-to power brand?
Watt box.
Watt box?
Vertical PDUs.
The vertical watt boxes?
18 volt.
So you guys, anyone else? Vertical PDUs or horizontal? By show of hands, we have a lot of people. Show of hands, how many are doing verticals? 1, 2, like the strip from top to bottom. Doing verticals?
Much more space.
Much more space. I like your answer. Anyone doing horizontal?
I throw them in there every once in a while.
Yeah.
So which one do you like better? The vertical. It was on the last group. They were a horizontal.
99% horizontal.
Yeah, you see, and you see the first group. They're never as good as the second group. I knew this. I told them they were all wrong. No joke, right? I thought it was a fucking joke. I was like, y'all wrong.
But I can tell you, what drives that too is the rack series that you're using. Slim 5, you don't always have the room for vertical, right? Well, I heard a lot of guys networking, right, doing the bigger racks and things like that. That's when you have adjustable rack rail and all this other stuff. It's a little bit wider than 19 inches. You're able to do that vertical, right? So
yeah. If you have a deep rack and you have shallow equipment, maybe you want it closer to it, so you want something that's rack mountable on the front, and you just get right at it. So there's different reasons why people use one versus the other, and sometimes there's a combination of vertical and horizontal in a rack.
that's pretty
right?
common to mostly see the combination.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How about UPSs? How many actually use UPSs with their system? 1, 2. Oh,
I love this group already.
Yeah, the last group, they're not here. You see what happened? So no, but it looks like more of the group, but still not everyone.
Yeah.
And again, these power problems that may have not has been such a problem yesterday, I'm telling you, the problem is getting worse. We are going into, as we get into green technology, clouds happen. Like things aren't. You guys are electricians. You know how it goes. Green tech is not as cool as it sounds. It only sounds cool on TV. But the reality, it creates all kinds of new problems for us. That's why having UPSs, managing voltage will be the gremlin in the system that you can't seem to figure out why does this thing lock up. It locks up because you're having problems. You're having power issues. You're having voltage changes, brownouts, which most of us can't even see because they're like, the customer's like, no, but the light's been on. Yeah, but when it dims like that, that's not normal. It's not supposed to do that. But we see this more and more today than ever before. Now, can you imagine what your gear is doing when that happens? It's like, I don't know what to do now. And then these are the service calls, and this is the profit. This is the Saturday night I'm out with my friends. I'm with the kids. I'm living my life, and my phone just rang, and I know who's calling. This is how you avoid that and get your life back, by doing these easy steps.
Yeah. I mean, we have these two main products for power, right? PDUs, vertical, horizontal, behind the display, and then we have UPSs, and they've always been like separate things. Like you buy one for one reason, you buy the other for backup. But we believe that in a cohesive system, a fully well-built system, that you need both of them, right? And definitely the UPS plays an important function that's more than just backup, like Mike was talking about. So we'll get into that. I just wanted to get into and you start thinking about power, like where your power needs to be in the rack. You got to think of getting power where you need it, right? So even if it's behind the display, well, how many outlets do I need behind the display? In the rack, again, same thing. Where do I need it? Do I need a vertical strip? Do I need a mix of vertical and horizontals? Am I plugging in a lot of devices that have those little wall warts? If so, is that going to encroach on another outlet? So I can't use that. So I have to, number how many outlets I actually have available because of encroachment of like bigger adapters.
How many people hate the wall warts? Those big old boxes that always fail, but look like they're kind of working. We're not really sure. Maybe it's working, maybe it's not. But maybe. Now these guys, they did something really cool. Our savior came in. They gave us power. Consistent, clean power. Now we're able to get rid of those wall warts. Now think about that. Now, they would have been outlets, right? So you need less power behind the rack, less wires to manage, less things you're touching. Like it's all going right here in a nice, clean way that can all it's gonna work.
Is it manageable?
These right now, no, but the next version of our Nexus products will have managed DC.
What's plugged into this?
Every little power wall wart that has like a big block at the end, we're getting rid of them.
How?
They plug in right here.
No, you cut the wire that has the block. Take your two wires. You take your two wires into a Phoenix connector.
But some stuff take 5 volts, some 12 volts.
They have different banks.
See the colors? That's the different voltages.
So now, if the item is different, they tell you you gotta bring the power supply as well too. So if you cut it, what are you gonna do now?
What, for returns? Return of the units. What a lot of guys are doing is just keeping some of them there that they can send back. Typically, what happens is the first point of failure on almost every piece of gear that's out there is that wall wart. That's a 5-cent piece that comes from overseas that's going on to a $2,500 piece of gear. That is the biggest fail point. Is that
Freeform transformer?
The transformer,
Yeah.
That's the industry term, but yeah, transformer, adapter.
That's a generic part. That's not a real part from the manufacturer.
We have different ones because devices can be either 5 volt or 12 volt. Those are the most common. But then there's also 24 volt. There's some restaurant stuff that's 24 volts, for example, right? So we have a couple different voltages that you just.
Are the amps the same as well?
The output? No, it varies. Yeah.
So you have different.
Yeah.
You can customize it, or it comes like
But
that.
yeah, because
It comes
12 volts,
yeah,
2
it
amps,
comes like
12
this.
volts.
Yeah, it could be.
How do
Yeah.
you change the amp, or it's
Is there a van?
No. So it's just like each bank is what it is. So in this one we give you a multiple. So if you have a mix of products that are different voltages, this can do that. If you have things like a lot of HDMI extenders that are all 1 voltage.
Fine.
Then you can get something like that that's either a 5 or all 12 or all
So it
24.
varies. The boxes that you have vary.
Yeah, they're all very
Kind of
very
spec
specific
out.
SKUs that have very specific
What
output.
about the amp down?
Yeah.
Amps. What about the amps? That's the question.
Well, the amps are listed on there. How many amps each bank can take?
Because some 12, like for example, some 12 over 1 amp, some of
Yeah.
them 5
Correct.
amps, some of them are 3 amps.
Yeah, so it gives
You have
the
notification
right
on here, too.
But if you load it up too much, there's an actual LED that'll go from.
Load too much on the machine or on the port itself.
No,
You
this-
can't
this device.
overload the other side, so you can put more. You could put a bigger unit on something that actually wants less. It's just heavy. So that can be over gauged because the unit is only going to take what it needs.
Okay.
So then you can share up the math amongst all the things.
Okay.
And if it
It will not
overgates,
fry it.
it
It will
will
not
not fry it.
Okay.
And if you go over, it's also very nice. It will nicely tell you.
That's what the display, it's got displays on it.
Right?
It's like a the more you have, the more faster it's flying.
Yeah, there's a little LED that will tell you.
So this is all yellow, that's color
green or
coded.
yellow.
Yeah, it
Different-
depending on the voltages, correct.
Different voltages, right?
Yeah.
Or-
This is a mixture of all.
What do you mean too close to the max?
So if you have a view of everything,
I like that. So like, more stripes, bad lines.
point of failure.
Because I see that one is different powers.
They don't just
All 12 volts?
They take them
All
to
12?
the outlets.
There's a
Right.
version
It's always
that's
it's always a thing. I need that.
think there's an all 5,
That
all
one
12.
has,
All 5, all
There's a
12.
couple
There's combination of stuff?
Yeah.
the what?
Yeah, there's a 5 and there's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
couple.
all of them.
That's
They can
custom
take
on
care
the
of you for
website.
everything.
It's all standard
It's all
product.
Legrand product?
Standard product.
And look, the rack you can go anywhere in the outlet on the same side. I can't lie, I wish the outlet came in from the back or something, not on the side, but can't get
You
everything.
know how I do these? I put the ears this way, and I rack mount it like that in the back.
That's cool.
That's how.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Even
Do you have a-
against the side,
You
you
got
can mount
a rail on top. and
Nice.
you
We
Yeah,
have one.
basically,
We
you
could
can mount
put
that
this,
here.
we could even mount this on the
Correct.
side like
You can go
that.
with it.
That's true too.
We have a smaller version.
And
Yeah, but you won't be able to take that out.
You
if,
mentioned this guy right now.
No, that's that tray.
It's not gonna come
Yeah,
out.
you can take it out with the tray.
We actually have.
This is smaller, like, give us that notification or something that's gonna.
That one is.
This is my first
not
time.
the thing. So we have smaller, just footprint power.
Especially because it's, if it's on
Behind
that
this
way,
way, we have a version of that.
do
that's
something.
smaller.
I see the ears, but how would you mount them?
The ears are. Oh my God, this is a different product, but the chassis itself shows you can do it over here.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the confidence.
Yes.
So they make power cords for these, they are 90.
18 volt,
So you
15.
can plug it in and.
I think
Yeah,
that's-
now, okay,
Yeah.
so even if you plug it
So you get 2.5 years. So I know what you're saying. You put two because it's split.
I got it right here. All I got is
Makes it cleaner. Oh, a million times. And it's nicer.
There's a great picture on the web that shows the before and after that I did when I did that. We had 24 units. I needed 3.5 power strips. I got rid of all them power strips, all them wall wood. One of those.
No, I didn't say that.
You need a charging port for your phone, you know? Late nights when it's dead.
Exactly.
When you're sitting in the rag, you charging your phone, trying to work on something or a light. I have a little USB light that actually.
Oh, that's good for the day.
This is great.
All right, so
All right.
But not full model.
But same thing in the PD.
no, only that the one that's
That one is gonna go with it.
It's a little bit lower.
Yeah.
So that one, each one tells you how much.
Got bigger problems.
You can load it up, you know, something like that. So if you have something that's 1 amp per device, then you're going to use split ports instead of 6.
Yeah.
The other one is very high power, so you can load it up fully, all 24 hours.
But I like that option where say you have 5 volt, 12 volt, and at the same time you have the USB. You don't have that with the high capacity.
And you can put this
But the
port,
USB?
12 volts on it.
Low capacity.
You can assign how much power goes to
And
it.
then we should look at new product, the high capacity.
Of course. So, like, that brings up a good question. Are you guys using a lot of RP? What about like
Because now we need a NIC
So
card.
we use it.
Yeah,
That's
only
already
RP.
fifty.
That's the surprising. So, like, versus USB, like, if you do POV, PC connections,
It's a lot.
Yeah.
USB,
It's a lot.
customers still using a lot of
So,
USB.
so nothing is ever gonna pull like that all the time. So everything you kind of dance around. That's why I really like it. It
Just use a USB.
really makes things a lot
easier. Yeah.
a lot nicer.
Yeah, power.
They're not gonna move away from
And time is money.
Yeah, how?
This is
What's
the,
that
what's the partner on this? The PDDC 312.
Hey, take pictures, should be on the back.
Yeah. So, so we talked about distributing the power, getting the power where you need it. The next layer on that is obviously protection, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that are in the environment that can cause issues to your system, right? And obviously it's a very expensive system, so you want to protect it. So at Middle Atlantic, all of our PDUs have surge protection. We have some that have voltage protection. And then we start talking about over and under voltage, which is, again, very common for under voltage, which is that brownout condition, right? It's something that a lot of times you may not even know it's occurring because your devices are going to continue to operate, but now they're operating under stress. And that stress, because it's a lower voltage, you're trying to pull more amps so that they can still output the same output, right? What's that doing is creating heat inside the unit. And as we all know, heat is bad for electronics. And then you get premature failure of whether it's a LCD TV, even at home, if you think of your appliances, your dishwasher, anything that usually when it breaks, it's usually like the motherboard or something that needs to be replaced.
Or that TV that HDMI keeps always going weird, and you're like, why do I always have to reboot this TV?
Yeah.
How much you want to bet? It's a sad. And the TV's electronics doesn't like it.
But you're 100% right, but some customers don't understand that. Like I had a situation where a customer, when he shut off the light, the TV go off. First I can't blink and go on. I'm like, this is not, the electrical is not correct here because obviously it looks like it's going to a loop where the TV power getting from this light at the same time. No, it's not correct. So I'm trying to explain when you try to explain to the customer.
You're explaining too much.
Yeah.
No, I respectfully, I tell you. So you've had this conversation multiple times with this person, and you are thinking that your outcome is going to change, yet you do the same thing, but the outcome is supposed to change. That's actually the definition of
We
insanity.
changed 3 TVs on that job.
No, and respectfully, hear me out. So I say, this is why this stuff is awesome. This is why you came here, because our words, who cares? You know what matters? Science. Tools that say things, that say, hey, here, this said this happened, and I have to do this. I always talk about a doctor. When the doctors open you up and you're like, oh, my friend could do this cheaper. That doesn't happen. They do what they do, and you're better, right? That's because they come with science, they come with facts, and they help you. Now, if you come into these conversations, because what you're saying is totally correct, and they have a solution to help you. So you're showing math, you say, hey, on this brownout at this time, your electricity is dropping, and because of this, this is your outcome. What more do I gotta say? My words don't matter. I'm showing you science. I'm not just selling you, I'm telling you.
We'll get them. They have tools that tells you what's happening when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if we just focus on surge protection, so this is our new Nexus PDU. So we're revamping our basic, non-intelligent PDUs. Giving it a nice friendly brand language. This is inside of one of the unit. Obviously, it's a digital image of the Series Surge board, right? So I mean, again, you guys are probably familiar with SurgeX and your Series Surge technology. This is slightly different, but on the same principle, built on the same principle, where these products are going to have multi-stage surge. So multi-stage surge is really just redundant surge, right? So you have like one layer that keeps getting hit all the time. When that fails, it's going to send you a notification on the front, and then you still have a backup, right? So you know, okay, well, I'm still protected, but I should probably look to replace this device, to just have that better peace of mind. With our series surge, it's never going to fail. It's going to last the lifetime of the system. So we don't have really any identifiers of that other than it's always protected on the unit. Another thing, when we talk about voltage protection, over voltage and under voltage protection, this new Nexus product has, we have it in our existing product today in some of them. All the new Nexus PDUs are going to have voltage protection built in. It's a economical way to keep your system protected by turning off the outlets. So it's actively has a microprocessor that's actively looking at the voltage. If it goes between a predefined, outside a predefined parameter, it'll shut the outlet off and continue to monitor it. And then once it's deemed as acceptable again, turn everything back on, right? Alternative to that would be, when we start talking about UPSs, you can easily do that with a UPS too, because the UPS really cleans up the voltage to make sure you have a nice clean 120 on the output. And with the UPS, obviously you get the added benefit of your system not going down during that event. So two options for that. This is the more economical option. Less economical is the UPS, which we still highly recommend because it depends on what that customer experience needs to be. You put that in there and it'll protect your equipment. And this is just a voltage protection, where we cut it off. We know that devices operate at a nice medium range, anywhere between 127 to 104. So we try to be very precise with our cutoff and our automatic return to the voltage. So let's get into UPS. So we've touched on distribution of power, protection, and this kind of rolls into protection and backup. When people think of a UPS, they think of just backup, right? I need, if power fails, then my unit, my system keeps operational. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't really need my AV equipment to be running if I'm out of power, right? I mean, it's not that critical. What you do need it for would be for like any nuisance tripping, or any nuisance like light flickers, any minor interruption that's like a half a second. Then systems go down, especially like your networks, right? Your Wi-Fi and all these kind of things go down, and now you're literally just for a momentary interruption, which was seconds or milliseconds. Now you're waiting about 10 minutes to get your system back up.
If it came back.
Right.
If it came back. Because there's certain devices that it may even, that little blip may be all it needed to not recover.
True.
Wiped itself. How many have seen an old Lutron homework system because the battery had died, and since the processor runs on a CMOS battery, and that CMOS battery was done, once that power said no more, there was no more lighting when it came back. These are real situations. These are real moments. We're having the correct tools. That processor would have lasted longer had we had UPS. That generator, which kicked in, that created that disgusting sine wave, would have not been had. We would not be caring how we've been using UPS. It's managing voltage, managing the power. And again, these are the gremlins. These are like, why can't I figure this out? Why doesn't this make sense? Why does it? It's never going to make sense because you got crazy stuff happening. You have to manage the power, and then the rest of the system will do the things you anticipate.
Yeah. So again, for backup, you definitely want it. You also want to have backup so that you can, in an outage situation, hopefully someone's on site that can actually physically, safely power down the system, right? So you're not just cutting power off to your very sensitive pieces of equipment. The number one reason that what we see integrators using, especially in the AV space, the number one reason that they put a UPS in the bottom of the rack is really to just get nice, clean power, right? The backup is a secondary, perk to having it, but really just get nice clean power because you have two types: a line interactive and online. The line interactive will try to clean up the voltage if there's anything dirty coming in, and then go to battery if it's really really bad. And then the online just continuously cleans it up and gives you a nice clean 120 volt on the output. We see online mostly in IT, but I mean you're getting bigger and bigger in the AV space as well. Right?
But it's really loud. It's
Yeah.
not the
Well, it's
same
running.
thing.
It's like a
It's got a
fan,
fan,
like
yeah.
this.
Yeah,
right?
you're hearing it. Now it's amazing what it does. It's some really cool tech, but there's yin and yang to everything. It's gonna run hotter. It's noisy as heck. That battery is running all the time, but the sine wave is perfect. Voltage is like even better than this. At that point,
Yeah.
it is a fixed number,
Yeah.
and it is fixed. It is never. Your gear will be in heaven with stuff like that. But again, this stuff isn't free. That's probably at the tip of the spear at cost. Once you hear online, you're gonna pay for it, but you do get a benefit from it.
So PDUs would not give you sort of clean energy that.
No, I mean
We
PDU is
expect-
just distributing what's coming out of the
That's all
wall,
it is.
right? And if it is doing protection from voltages specifically, it's cutting power off when it hits a certain voltage,
Gotcha.
right? And
Not
so
managing.
no, it's not managing. It'll turn it off. So if your system is still safe because now it's off, it's not seeing a bad voltage, whether it's over voltage or under voltage, but it's not continuously running. Whereas with a UPS, you can just keep your system running continuously, and not yeah. So that's why we see a lot of everyone, if they can have it in their budget, they throw a UPS at the bottom of the rack of every rack.
And you got to be careful with the marketing. Like how many sells those vertical snap PDUs? I know I do. They talk about the voltage regulation on it. You set the address. All you're doing is telling it to email you when it goes over. That's it. I know the engineers who make the thing. I actually thought incorrectly. I had someone laugh at me because I was so wrong. They were like, "No, it just emails you." And it just felt really stupid after that. I really don't want an email. I wanted to do something. So just know that there's a lot of weird marketing. Know what the products are going to do and understand, and really like it. And again, engage. There's a lot of people here ready to talk.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing around PDUs that say they do voltage conditioning, and what they really mean is that they turn off the power when they say conditioning. So we don't like to use that term. Like condition is definitely something in a UPS because it's actually manipulating the voltage to make sure you get something nice and clean on the output. But voltage protection is what we say for our PDUs because it's doing something a little bit different. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
There's some sites that the homeowner don't even know they have bad power until we put the UPS in.
Oh, you hear?
And then you just hear the battery kicking in,
Yep.
turning off, kicking in, turning, and like, what the hell? And that we start realizing you have a bigger problem right now. Because of it.
But again, it's really easy to explain it when you're not selling and you're telling.
Yeah, but then you gotta get a stupid answer from them. But my lights are working. Yeah, they still have a problem with the electric.
Right.
Typical answer. Well, my light is working. It was fine before you got here.
Oh, that's the best one. It was fine before you got
You gotta hear those words. I had a customer tell me once, I paid $4 million for this house. You can't tell me my power is dirty. I was like, this is the worst, dirtiest power on Long Island. It's right here in Southampton. The worst, dirtiest power. I don't care what you pay for the house. I don't care if you pay for $40 million. The power sucks.
The nicer the neighborhood, the worse the power. Because the reality, the house probably has the same amount of electricity and resources as probably a local community, and your neighbor may be running a fucking water park in his house.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Home computer and everything.
yeah. And then do you know the amount of motors it takes to run a good sized pool? And those motors, they're fucked. You know what I mean? Like you're dealing with that.
Yeah. So we talked about backup, and I want to just talk a little bit more about like management, right? So this is going to make your customer happy. It's going to make you happy. So at Middle Atlantic we have what's called our rack-link technology. So that's our IP control. We have a couple different line of PDUs that have that technology with different feature sets, right? We have like an entry level. You want to turn outputs on and off remotely, you can do that. You want to auto ping something, you can do that. Then we have like our high-end model that you want to monitor every single outlet on the device. You want to get really granular with the data, right? Power data. it'll log all the events, and then you can even set up like if then responses and just like make it I guess make it an automated thing, where if something happens.
Think about the system. As we're all looking for cool terms and things that why do we exist? Self-healing is a term you're hearing more and more. And imagine your system. Because this is what we do internally. This is happening now. This is not if, this is you should be doing this. So your modem falls offline, right? So the system is pinging stuff. It's like, oh, I got no internet. All right, let me start taking steps. Let me restart this. And sometimes something is broken. There's nothing is gonna fix it. So the worst thing we could also have is the thing turns itself into a fucking circle. It's like just doing it. No, you can try a couple times, wait this much in between your try. After 5 times, you're not working, you're done, leave it alone. And then either way you're in your problem, but at least it made that effort. You understand when the cut, and then once you get this all done, you can tell the customer this is where money starts really being made. The state of your home. This is what happened this month. People pay thousands of dollars for a paper that basically said, nothing fucking broken, you're okay. And they're like, this is amazing. And this stuff, as you see, the UPS, the rack link, amazing tool, really good. But the reality, it's one part to an amazing puzzle. Having products like Domos. How many people do oversee remote management? Anybody? 1, 2? Not really, but it's not. More of you should be doing this because this is how money is truly made and also gives you peace of mind. I manage my customers. Every single one will have a Domos and an oversee put on their house. I do this every single site. This allows me to do what I do.
That's a question. Now, if there's specific, is this only control? We can control only from a computer, or can you control through an app on the phone as well?
App. For Middle Atlantic specifically, you could control it via Domos. So we're integrated with Domos. So any of our IP products, including our PDUs, including our newest UPS that has rack links built into it, our Nexus UPS. As long as you have a Domos account, you can log in and remotely, from your phone or wherever you can
Is this open at all? Do you guys have like a REST APIs or webhooks
Yep.
at all?
It's open. Yeah, I mean you can do anything you want. We'll give you the protocol and you can do whatever you want.
But think what Domos does, because a lot of us are racing through documentation when we're in a crisis moment. We know a device, a VIP called, I have a problem. Hey, my shit is fucking broken. I need something fixed. I pick up. Oh, all right. Where are you? I'm in the family room. Okay, stand by. Must be the receiver. I got no time to look at what PDU, what it's connected to. I've looked at 5 other projects. I have no clue where anything is. So I need to fix this now. And the customer has no appreciation to what is going on. So what do? I look for the receiver. In the receiver in Domo, it'll say reboot. It knows where to go to make it happen for you.
Like an oversee, you have to know what PDU, what port, and reboot the port. Domos will say, here's the device, what do you want to do? Reboot it. It knows who to reboot and how to do it.
You know what's not communicating.
Yeah. And again, that time is that peace of mind that I'm with my family, or that you want to be cool, resolve something like that. Don't worry. And they're like, wow, that just happened. They're like, for me, service is not a 4-letter word. I make money with service because customers are like, check this out. I'm gonna call Restrepo. Hey, it's fixed already. I'm like, and that's that thing where service, like, how many people have gone on vacation somewhere really nice and asked for something and was like, this is the coolest shit ever, right? Service is supposed to be that way. It is not a bad thing. You can, when you put that air into it, when you answer the phone, oh, I know. I'm sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. Think about that. You sound like a 5-year-old telling your mom you didn't do it. That's not the air you want to walk into that. You are the alpha. I get it. We are in this together. Yes, I know the problem. I have the tools, and this is why we invest in this way, and I can show you the science. And again, when you have products like this, it's all doable. Your voltage question that you've been having that conversation, don't have the conversation, show them the science. This is why you're having problems.
Go into the data, there's events, there's a timestamp data log like every minute or every 2 minutes that it'll just tell you, you can go back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it'll download that file. It'll tell you everything that's happening. At
How
that
many ports
outlet.
that have? 8?
So the UPSs here are 8. So we do have our base model is bank control, and then we do have the individual outlet control model, which is what you see here. So that's kind of like the best thing of both worlds, right? It's like intelligent PDU and a backup UPS all built into one.
So now, this is great. Where we can manage up to 8 devices.
Mhm.
How about when you have the previous switch you show us where you can connect the HDMI extender,
Yep.
and all the other stuff in? How this can benefit me saying my TV is not working. How can I know where's the problem? That will not tell me that that's the issue and that specific part.
Yeah, well, because what you'll do is you'll extend that outlet and you'll plug it into the PD inside of the rack. So you'll be managing those outlets and you can quickly
I
reboot
just
that.
basically reboot it.
Yeah, but then you'll also see the voltage and you'll be managing the entire signal. So you won't be worried about another phase doing something or another electrical because you're bringing it all back to your core. You see from the outlet, so you know, did the TV do something weird? You'll be seeing the fluctuations. You'll know. And TVs do weird, just even at best. They took it a bad update. I didn't like it, blah, blah, blah. But now you quickly reboot it.
Yeah, we have our Premium Plus, which again it monitors everything at the outlet level. So if you're monitoring the outlet, and you can set thresholds, if you know what the amps or what the power draw is supposed to be, and you're not seeing it, then that will trigger something, right? It'll trigger you to either reboot it, however you want to set it up. Maybe you just wanted to send you an email so to go check on it, to actively check on it, or even remotely check on it, or you can tell it to do something. Cycle it like 3 times, just to see if you can get it to recover.
So
yep, yeah.
Now, if we have a problem with the router in the house, the internet, so that means we have no access to this, right?
Yeah. But that's why having the internal system that we spoke about earlier, where you build the rules into it, you're going to teach the system, here are the steps and how to play out if you have a problem. So it'll know where it is to understand where the problem is by what it's looking for.
So basically, if the internet drop off, it's command by
You tell it to look at an IP address, and then if that IP address stops responding, and if that's for the router, you just tell it automatically reboot like 2 times or 3 times. You don't want it to be in this continuous cycle, right? Reboot and then wait. So it'll reboot. It'll wait because it has to give it time for that router to come back up, right? And for it to start to see a signal again, and and it'll also send you an email, right? So you can just have that active notification as well that something's happening. You can either call the customer and then find out what's going on. Instead of waiting for them to call you and say the system isn't working, you can just
send me an email, that box or the cloud account?
The
both.
If this
the box will
have
send
internet,
you. The box will send it to you, but also Domo will tell you when it falls offline. So that's why it's a double tier thing. That's why as they made a very amazing individual box, all right. But the world is bigger than that box. Domo is the bridge, it's the translator for all these little different boxes that come together, and it puts it together. So to your point, when that falls offline, you're totally correct. How's it supposed to talk? You can't. The network is over. Now it can only defend itself in the way you taught it to. But Domo is in the cloud. So it's going to be like, hey, my guy fell off. He's not calling back. I have a problem. Now, this problem, because it's Domo, is also getting logs. So you can run reports on a monthly basis saying, hey, this device falls off every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Maybe we want to change it out. And again, it's you telling them the problem, not you looking reactive to something you're not understanding. Domo is the bridge to extend the services that they give us.
That's a provided service?
No, this is an additional service you say. Now, Domos is not expensive. The box you can buy on Amazon directly. It's around $100, $200. The service is like $25 a month. It's not bad.
You can host it on your own. If you have a server on site, you can host it.
But you lose functionality when you have on the server, because then if you have multiple VLANs, not to get too caught up in the loose, the box has a lot. What you're saying is very true. You can also run it on a Pi, and there's a lot of other ways. So they give you, because it's a very open box, they give you tools. But the reality is that sometimes they can be a little bit more challenging for you to really get it. But their box for like $200 will do a whole lot. Go to VLANs and all, create blah blah blah. Awesome box.
What is
This is just power management, or does everything?
It manages everything. It manages
getting
using
loud.
SNMP and a lot of products natively, where it'll talk to it, understand, be able to push through, knowing firmware, doing the backups. Like it'll do
All
all
of your
kinds of
devices,
One
all
more
of your AV devices, or only power distribution?
any device.
Any device, any AV
Any
device.
IP device, it'll even if it doesn't have SNMP, it'll be able to ping it and say, all right, you exist. Then you can go deeper into the integration where even with SNMP, it'll be like, I exist and this is who I am. And then you can go deeper and be like, hey, I want to know this port and tell me when this port hits 75% and then notify me back so I can mod. Then you can get super granular and stuff and create
Auto
custom
searches
reports.
the network.
Oh yeah, searches everything. We'll even search security ports, all kinds of blah, blah, blah. Not to get too caught up.
It'll tell me a network port switch, what's on it.
Yeah,
Like Ubiquity.
yeah, hardcore, hardcore.
It'll show you the cores and then tell you who's connected to which core. That's the network topology on the top right corner.
And not to get too caught up on another product, because it's definitely a very broad thing, and we're gonna have a lot more trainings. I'm sure we'll have almost a lot. And look, I'm always available. Anybody has any, you want a side table, something a little bit more specific to you, and talk about how I'm game. I'm game. I want to help. I love engaging. I love helping. I got a lot of friends who all want to help out. All right.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, that's all I had for power. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we're right at 3.
terminal.
I mean, this is a great conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Now we gotta get wire management, right? Isn't it magic?
no, we can blow through this if you guys got time, but I know we're only scheduled for 3, so.
You guys
You
want
can
more
start
time? I
first.
know we got the 3. Can we
Yeah.
The boss says it's all right. You guys are okay. We can keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Anybody need waters or anything?
Yeah.
Waters? You need water? Get some water. Anybody else need water?
You got beer.
We got beer as well. You need a beer? We got beer. There's IPAs and everything. Hey.
I gotta get going, man, unfortunately.
No, I know.
No,
It's
no.
fun.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
appreciate you
appreciate
coming.
it.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for
Thank you.
listening.
I'll see you next
Hey, do you
time
have
you
a
come
card?
around. Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
No, I got you.
All
Thank
right.
you. Appreciate it.
I think most of us are
I'll
back
see you
here.
again.
We'll start going through some
We're gonna
cable
do
man.
more of this. Please. Tell me.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And if anyone has to leave, I get it. But the biggest thank you, the biggest takeaway is, hey, we should all be talking to each other. Cannot tell you the resource is the person next to you. Bigger than any of this other stuff, the person next to you is better than all of them. They will help you. They will get you on the next project, and they will pull you out of a fucking burning home. I'm telling you.
Take care, everybody.
All right, thanks.
Sure that we got business cards from you guys, email addresses, because we're gonna be sending this out. We're gonna be sending out other information and other dates on when we're gonna be doing this. Okay, thank you.
Make sure you go on social media and like and subscribe. Press right here.
All right. So cable management, really quick. There's a bunch of the stuff that we're going to cover. So the benefits of cable management, there are benefits to it, right? We'll touch on them. The planning and placement, that's pretty straightforward. We're going to talk on cable entry, cable handling. Most of the cable that we're doing today is network cabling, right? It's category 5E, 6, 6A, that kind of thing, which is a lot different than a lot of the other cables that we did when we were analog, right? We're going to talk cable management itself, vertical and horizontal, power lacing, inter-rack cabling, and then we'll touch on some of the standards that are out there. For AV, there hasn't been a ton of standards, but what's really nice that once we move to a category cable, when it comes to category and the data and the structured cabling, everything they do has a standard. You can't twist a screw without a standard on that side, right? So now we're able to take advantage of a lot of those standards that they already have in place because we're using that same cable. So you've seen this before, kind of gives you a flow, right? So the benefits, right? Supporting vertical and horizontal, supporting the cable. As we get more and more cable, it gets heavier. The bend radiuses, we'll talk about that. It's also when it goes to the back of the connection, right? If I got just cables this thing, they're off of something that's just an RJ45, it's going to drape. You want to support that cable. Again, supporting at the connector. The thing is that connector that's on the back of that unit, like even some of the stuff that we have, it's probably soldered or somehow put onto a board. And if you start that, that's when you can get that connector break off the board. The organization of it, right? We all know we want to leave that job with how, looks impressive, right? You don't want to be that guy like, yeah, he came, it was mess, I'll never call him back again, right? You want to make, again, I talk about, we go to trade shows, right? People don't show their kids on the phone anymore or anything like that. They're showing their cable. Look what I did in this rack. Look at this rack I built, right? Everybody has it on their phone. It's what I call your bonsai, my bonsai tree, right? You picture it, you put it together. Again, we talked about Velcro, we talked about wire ties a little bit. Professional appearance, that's when, it's your calling card. And then the end thing is really serviceability. How am I going to, even if I'm not the person going back to have to service it, someone else is, make their job a little easier, make it so that they can get to the cable, make sure they can see where that cable goes, right? Make it serviceable. Yeah. Label, we talk about labeling, right?
Even if you look like shit, at least label.
Even take a Sharpie and write something on the cable. Just do something. Yeah.
But it has to be a label. It can't be like the other side. You have to say something that makes sense.
You could have the 14 cables, they all say network on it, right?
Yeah.
So again, planning and placement, it's just like we talked about with, figuring out what goes in the rack. Let's figure out where that cable is coming in. We always don't have we don't get to choose how the cable is going to come into the rack in most cases. It could be, if we're lucky enough, we're wiring the building. If not, someone else wired the building. That cable's that coming up from above, below. We don't know which way. So take a look at that first, because that's going to drive a lot of things that you're going to have to do. And we'll touch on that. Just keeping bundles at a manual side. This is a little overkill, right? This is networking. This is broadcast. These guys do cable bundles the size of your arm, right? There's just tons and tons of cable. But it's a controlled chaos. They kind of know what it is. But for us, we don't use that much cable in some cases. But again, make it, put it into a scalable thing that you can work with.
But something to look at, I do like about this picture, is because even if you don't understand about something, and they look at that, even when they talk about people who are technically very pretty and everything, is symmetry. We are all built in this way to look for symmetry. Things are symmetrical. So when we see there, and you see the Velcro goes in that pretty line and everything, the wires seem to go in those symmetrical motions, those things, they make your mind believe that it's right. Even if it was all wrong, your brain would be like, wow.
It's beautiful.
Right? Like
not a single one of them wires tested out, but it looks good.
Yeah, it could all be wrong. You'd be like, well, that looks so good.
What do you do if you want to be wise? It's not going to tell you need to replace the tracy.
Oh, God. I quit.
You mean something like that? We've all seen it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Airflow. Like, I got a piece of gear that's probably behind that right in the middle there that's breathing from the front, pulling cool air from the front and blowing out the back. Do you think that's working? Probably not, right? Simple things like cable chases in between, right? Get your cable. You may have a lot of cables and you don't want them in the back. We can bring them to the sides. Go with a wider rack. Go with, talk about some of these server and network enclosures. They're 27, 30 inches wide. Not because the gear is that way, because of the cabling, right? They want to keep stuff out to the side so that you can get airflow, you can get service, you can get to the back of the equipment.
And it catches dust. That's why all that dust is there, is because it's like a sponge. It's just sitting there as the air tries to push through. And that's the thing that happens. In the beginning, I bet you it was fine. And then they're like, why? It keeps getting worse, but nobody's changed anything. And you're like, but it keeps like growing. Like there's like stuff growing in there, and it's reality, it's just becoming harder and harder for it to breathe. And then the dust, it's making the dust, and it's everything. Look at the floor. Look at all that. Now think about this. So the person you're engaging to give you money to do your expensive thing treats their expensive thing in this way. and then you wonder why they argue about the big number to do stuff. Is because if you work this way, they don't respect you. They give you what you deserve, and they're more concerned about your price than your work. And if they're worried about your price and not your work, you're fucked. All right.
So cable entry we talked about is a couple different ways. A lot of what we do at our racks, we leave the top so wide open and the bottom is wide open in most cases, so that we give you the choice to bring that cable in, right? Gives you all the room to bring the cable in. It's just simple things like the opening in the top of the rack is aligned with the rail brackets, so that when I have cabling coming straight in, that it goes straight down. It's not having to be jogged. If I got power that I'm piping in, I got conduit to go to the top of my power strip into my J box. It's a straight run for the conduit. It's not a jog in and around because you want that opening to be 19-inch for a panel, right? It's things like that. Down below, right, we have a wide open base. We have riser bases that are built for raised floor. You don't have to use it for that. You can take a 3.5-inch base, put it on the floor. Now I got room for cabling to go from rack to rack without having to do it above. I can do it below. We do cable ladders and things like that as well. So again, having that nice clean way to get to the cables.
And not all racks are the same. Some of the other
No.
providers, it's weird that they actually screw down plates on the bottom of them, and you have to take them. I don't know why they do that, and they don't tell you that. There's so many racks I find, and no one takes the plates off the bottom, so the thing is not venting correct.
Is there a specific reason to go with up versus from the bottom, or is it just depend on kind of like the cabling that's coming out?
Yeah. Because if you're gonna move at least look, everyone has their own way of doing stuff, but I have an exact explanation of why it comes in. If you come in from the bottom and I move, look, this wire's on the bottom, right? Look what's happening. We're dragging this shitty wire everywhere, right? How embarrassing is that? Now, if I had come in from the top, I would know that I can always pull this rack twice the height of this, right? Because I would be able to loop it down and back up and it would never touch the floor. That's a lot of motion I can do very clean with no one ever noticing. So I should be able to come in. Usually what we'll do is try to come in from the top, have a nice little swoop. It'll go right back in. Then I can move it around. It never touches anything. Now, when you come in, you can't just come in. You need to make sure you manage the bend radius, you manage the cable. You're pulling it from several directions so you can control how this is going to move at all times, because this is where your next set of problems will start becoming.
That whole 9-inch.
Yeah.
And the weight.
Yep. And as the racks get bigger, you have more to manage in there. Then you also have to think to yourself, I can have power coming out of the same hole because now I've introduced new problems. But again, you want to try to come from the top, but I usually come from the opposite direction. So I have power on one side and then low voltage on the other, and the whips will come out. Now, I'll be honest, I know they have these holes. I really stay away from them because I've definitely filled this thing up to too much and been like, oh no, now what? So I try to give myself that room that I can really grow. The top as well has holes, but again, I have definitely overfilled those and had to cut this stupid thing off. But look,
So that,
brush plate.
so yes,
yeah, on the
so
bottom.
two things, that can go to the top.
To the top.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah. And then that plate that has those knockouts, take that whole plate out.
Yeah.
I know not every rack has that.
Oh, that's
Yeah, this actually.
Yeah, that top plate will come out. It has laser knockouts in it, so you can do grommets or you can take the whole plate out. Like this, another series that we have, this top here has this part that comes out, and we actually have a brush panel that can drop in there. So now you have a brush that goes in there.
And they sell, because a lot of times we'll cut into the racks, they sell a grommet kit. So you custom cut it, you can put the cool little grommet kit so it's not like a piece of tape. It's an actual finished part. Again, there's a finished piece to everything. And you should be using these little parts.
Yeah.
This is the difference from like, all right, I kind of did something to like, it's done. It looks amazing. This is magazine stuff throughout. This is something to be proud of. This is like amazing stuff. This is the way we should be installed. This is the way that they will anticipate. And then this is at that point, when we go to debate of like why we're going to do this, why I need this better product, it all cleans out so much easier to understand why.
We have a 4.5-inch grommet kit. It's four pieces, and that one down the bottom there on the left is a grommet version, so you can put cables in. What's cool is that'll fit in our. You can buy just a standard 4-inch fan top with no fans in it. You can use that for cable entry. A lot of our racks have laser knockouts for 4-inch fans. Take that. You want to use that for cabling? Go ahead if you don't need a fan. But it gives you a nice place. It's grommet. It's not going to cut the cable, but it also helps with keeping dust out, and it also helps with thermal, right? Trying to control the air in there. So cable handling, we'll touch on this a little bit. Bend radius is the big thing with category cable. Pull force, we talked about that. It's not just even when you're pulling the cable, but it's also the strain of the cable when you're doing those big service loops, right? When you do that, all that weight of the cable is going somewhere. I've seen it where they make a really nice loop and they go up into a ceiling and it's sitting on a piece of metal and it's literally 90 degrees to cable because all the weight of the cable is hanging up there. It's as simple as using something. I think we'll come to it in a couple. Using something as simple as a waterfall. We sell waterfalls for cable ladder. Just give it that radius. Don't let it come to a raw edge like that and drop, because your weight is gonna play with the cable at that point, right? So
think of like a drink bottle, A bottle should be able to go in there and it waterfall like that.
Yeah.
If you think with that idea with that, and literally you can grab any drink, you put it in there and it looks normal, it's not fighting it, you're probably okay. And the wire will tell you. Like, you ever grab blue wire and it turns white when you pull on it? That's the wire telling you fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, it's not supposed to do that. That's to show you that you've overstrained the cable. Like, you've done too much to it.
So you got, rule of thumb, category cable, 4 times the radius of the cable, right? That's really rule of thumb. Every manufacturer has their own thing. They're all stated what they do. But if you do 4 times or 10 times on fiber, you're going to be all right. So talking about the waterfalls, right? We're dropping from cable ladder. So if I was to just go direct off that edge of that cable ladder, again, that's where it's going to drop the weight 90 degrees. You got that waterfall. You can see it just kind of lets you bring it in to a brush grommet. That's one of our server cabinets that we have there. So you can see it's got the grommets in the front and the brushes in the back. I think it's right. Most of the cable is about 25 pounds of pull, right? I've seen people thinking, yeah, I got this. It's clear. And they are yanking. Like, oh, get the truck. I'm going to tie. I get this pull, right? They're pulling on this stuff and they end up with a handful of sheathing. Like, it's like, wait, where's the rest of this cable?
And you can add those after the fact. So it's not like, say you go back and you're like, wow, I didn't do that.
Yeah, you can go back. And
you can put them back on and work it. It's not the end of the month.
We talk about, this is probably always causes the biggest debate when you talk about wire tie versus Velcro. Again, there's a right way to use wire ties, right? There's a right way to cut wire ties, and we'll talk about that later too. But Velcro is reusable. You can do it, right? Wire ties, if it's done right, it's just, think about a garden hose, right? That category cable is kind of a cross section on the bottom there. It's got air in there. There's flow in there. There's all this stuff. You start to squeeze that just like you squeeze your hose. You got water flowing out of hose. The more you squeeze, the less water. Think about that as information, right? Category cable works the same way. You're not sure? Again, everything has documentation. There's the white. There's the white he's talking about. How many times that come out of a box of category cable, right? Why is it not coming out? All of a sudden it goes boom, and you look like, oh no.
When you got a new guy pulling wire and he sees the loop and he goes like this. Unwind it, man. Oh, yeah,
I fixed it.
Usually he steps on the one end so he can pull it, right? I got it. Look, boss. All good. So, again, temperature is another thing. You guys do, maybe it's a pre-build on a house, right? And it's in the middle of January. It may be tough to run the cables at that point.
No, the reality, if winter and summer, especially in the extreme locations, and we're seeing that extreme thing where the cables will crack. They will do weird things if they get really cold. And then the inverse, say you're in the Hamptons or something, you're on the beach and it's not UV related and your wires are just sitting out there in that sun baking. The wires are going to become brittle. They're going to fail. You have to take care of your stuff.
Yeah, most plastic, just the cold just makes it do things. And especially if you're using non-plenum cable too, because it'll definitely it'll act a little bit different than the plenum cable. Again, ask the manufacturer. You look at this as just some diagrams, pulling tensions and things like that. The rack design standard, we took a lot of this stuff, pulled it from a lot of different places, and put it all in one spot. So it's really nice to see. Vertical cable management, dressing those cables from top to bottom, right? Separating your bundles and things like that. You want to be able to do that.
Now look at it. Look at it. You see where he manages those wires? Don't that look all like, it doesn't look awesome like the other one, right? But it's the same thing. You see how they brace? It's like here. It's like everywhere. Like the guy was just doing it. Now here's the thing. It's not wrong, right? It's not wrong. It works perfectly fine. None of us can say it's wrong. But does it look amazing? Right? Does it look amazing? That looks like Joe Schmo did. Now that's the thing. Those extra how nice would it have been if it was a perfect line? A perfect, right? It would have been like, ooh, that's that pro move. These are the things you should be looking, the lines, the symmetry, because that'll bring the pretty out in the racks.
So why do we do vertical, right? Basically to support the cables, segregate it, and allows, a lot of times there's not a way to use the hook and loop or the Velcro, right? You have to have some sort of slot versus a hole. So it gives you that. Rear cable management, talking about horizontal, dressing left to right, just some top views, showing some labeling, showing how you can get that lace bar, different offsets. We go 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10-inch offset. Because depending on where your rail is, you want to get that cable. You want to get that cable manager closest to the back.
Now I gotta be honest. I saw this picture before. It kind of like triggers me. The wires are not supposed to go by both sides. I think that's just for illustration. That's actually incorrect. Your low voltage should be going to one direction. Your rack should have a low voltage section and then a high voltage section. You should not be intermingling the both of them. You're going to create new cool problems that are not needed. So that's why I say you shouldn't be doing it that way.
Yeah. No, I would say that bottom, like what you call the tie wrap or Velcro in the back and have it go out. It works with these good, but I actually went to service the wall-mounted rack, and I couldn't get to the back of it. So here I am. There's like a Sonos port there.
Mm-hmm.
I pull it out to look in the back, but they didn't leave any slack or no loop. They just tie it. So when I pulled it out, it pulled everything out.
Having serviced 100%. Yeah, so you were on a wall rack that doesn't pivot open.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally a fixed wall rack
in
where
the
you
closet where I couldn't even go to the
you
side.
couldn't
I
open
just had to work it.
Yeah.
But now you think, look, that's the perfect solution. That is the perfect thing. Because I see those racks, and every time I see it, I rip them out because they're the wrong rack. Everything you said was a nightmare. But Middle Atlantic has a special rack. You know what the rack does? What it's supposed to do? It pulls completely out and spins, so you can be like a human and just work on it.
So that's a perfect example of someone wiring that rack and doing it there, and then hanging it on the wall, not caring who's going to come back and have to service it. Right? It was easy for them to put that gear in there, wire it, and do all that other stuff because they were there. Then they took that rack and they hung it, bolted it to the wall, and walked out. Right? That's thinking about how we're going to service later on. Right?
Sell them on a new rack.
So horizontal cable management. We kind of touched on that a little bit. This is just some diagrams off the standard. We have interconnect right within. So you got cabling within one rack, cabling between racks, cabling from the rack out to somewhere else. This is kind of what we'll touch on a little bit. Interconnect, showing this one's got the cable chase in between with the thing off, allows you to get to the cabling. And then kind of touching on some of the standards. Again, what's nice, like I said before, when we moved into using a lot of category cable, there's been standards for category since it's been Cat 2 and 3, I think. Well, plain old POTS line, right? Telephone line before. Basically, there's a standard written before the cable was even introduced. So we get to see that. And it's not just, hey, this cable needs to do that. There's a residential version of it, how it needs to happen, the handling of it, all of that stuff. So it's good. ANSI and TIA have a lot of those standards out there. So, and then Avix has been trying to really build out some of their standards because AV did never live by standards. It was, this is how I like to do it. This is how I like Mike to do it, right? It's never a standard. When you went from one company to the other, you either did how they did it or you tried to change the way you did it when you went to that company, right? So
Now, something I noticed we didn't talk about. is like how many people have to move something in the rack while you're in the midst of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, at some point you gotta move something, right? Things move. I saw a bunch of perfect wires. I look like throwing away wires to me, right? Because that's not the right wire at that point. You moved it; they don't work. Now, even in here, I don't think you're illustrating, but I bet you that raised floor, there's service loop sitting underneath
And
it.
that purple right there kind of look like a bundle.
Yeah,
of
you
box.
see it? It's hiding a little.
Yeah.
These are the little things that people don't talk about. You need to be your own best friend. You need to work in a way like you're thinking of yourself tomorrow, and you gotta be like, hey, all right, I'm not gonna fuck Mike over. I know I gotta leave him a little bit of wire because they're gonna ask him for some crazy thing, and he's gotta be able to move it. So let me leave him this service loop here, so there's some room. So you gotta think like that. Give yourself room to move. Or like, wow, the customer falls in love with you. That $30,000 job is $400,000 now. This is happening. This is not a fiction. This is happening. We got shit everywhere now. Oh man, good thing I had a service loop. We added more racks. We kept working, and you keep walking. When the upgrades become easy and not huge challenges because you've been kind to yourself, they have been easier, and they go through fast.
So, a couple of things that we offer and just some ideas that we've seen out. A lot of times you don't have the room on the side to segregate your cable bundles because you may be in a slim 5 that's really narrow. Taking a 2, a 4, and a 6-inch offset lace bar and putting it in the same location, now it can run different. That's a top view looking down. And actually, since we've done that, we now have a product that actually is a 9-inch offset that has 2 bars that it's basically works like lever lock. It goes in there and now I can adjust and have different depth stuff. The other thing too is a lot of people, what we've seen, like to take the inside corner of the rack rail, and that's where they run cables, internal cables, right? That's great. All of a sudden I got a blank panel or something I got to put in the back, and I take this long ass screw and I go like this, right through the cable bundle. HPQs we call them. They're short little stub. You can see the difference from where it is. The head is rounded, so it's not going to shear the cables, and it doesn't stick out as far, and it allows you to do that. They're great for lace bars, panels, and things like that. Don't use them to hold your amplifier and stuff like that, obviously, because they don't grab a lot of thread. But for what you want to do there in the rear, that's exactly what they're meant for.
But the reality, you shouldn't be using like hammer drills or anything. Screws inside of a rack just need to be snug. You're not holding structure together. We're not building a house. We're just screwing something in. You lightly hand. That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah, you could do a clutch, maybe 2, 3 on a drill if it's adjustable, something like that. Anything more, to your point, when you come back 6 weeks later, it's almost like someone went and tightened it up. It's just, especially if you have a lot of the change in temperature and everything else like that. And it's, sometimes it's an aluminum washer against a metal rail. Things are going to happen and they're going to feel tighter than you left it. So, and we don't want to strip that out.
Think about it. Best it comes out, worse, you strip it out, and now it's stuck.
So, yeah, we're going to use wire ties. Make sure we trim them properly. The next guy sticks his arm in there, comes out with about a 7-inch gash coming up their arm, right? So, again, there's tools out there that allows you to cut them better.
Who's team tie wrap? Who uses tie wraps?
Oh, yeah, I got one. Try not to.
That
with the whole thing.
That's a weapon, man. You threatening me? What's up?
And it just something one of the electrician friends just takes his lineman pliers and grabs it, he turns it about a quarter turn, half turn, and rips it, and it makes it nice and round, and there's no cutting. So it gives you a nice edge. And you can literally, at that point, you take your hand, run across that part, it doesn't even cut you. So I think that covers cable management. So I know I blew through that quick, but a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff to think about. There's standards out there to follow. There's different stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question, just your point on low voltage versus power distribution. Not every piece of equipment obviously is going to be on one side versus the right side, right? So how do you kind of proceed with?
So when the device comes down, usually we'll do several things. So if I can come down, I'll usually loop it around underneath itself and come across, but a little further back. So I have a small loop, or I'll put it on top of itself and kind of have like holding forward up and across. managed from this side, so it held it forward. This would be somewhat loose, so I could move.
So it's still away from the voltage out, and then just
Yeah,
have flexibility to move it.
Yeah, you don't
the
wanna
key is to
manage
keep
too
them
much. You wanna
separate.
manage it in a way where you gotta be able to take it apart, and it
Yeah.
you can't fight it.
And then, like, how do you know what side to put it on? If the house isn't telling you already, like, where the wire's coming from, I just basically look at the equipment
Yep.
and see where most of my power
Yeah,
plugs
gotcha.
are.
Yeah, three-
It usually will be all to one side. That's the power
You're
side.
going to have one or two.
Side.
You're going to have one or two on the left, but
Yeah.
most of them, where you come into an issue when you have redundant power, especially if you do security and that other stuff, where you have redundant power supplies, they put them on opposite sides. So that's when you'll see a lot of them now. I've seen they do put both the powers on the same side now, which is really better. But a lot of times, if you have redundant, it was on both sides. But
One thing just to know, one of the things that I've been doing recently is, once I know exactly essentially where my connectors are, I'm actually getting new adapters, right? Getting the lengths and actually just making sure I have a service loop and just tying it directly into it. So it actually hooks it directly into the equipment.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't let you pull it out.
Okay.
Now, yes and no. You have to start understanding the delta of what that's costing service-wise and everything, because they also sell some amazing IC cables. You may find yourself wasting money, even though it sounds like you're not, but when you factor in what it'll take to just have water cable that works. Some of the more better cables actually are better. So there is. Now you have this whole scary UL thing. You cut a wire and you put a cool little connector. Are you an electrician? Yeah, but here's the questions that start coming up out of nowhere. Everybody start pointing fingers. Who did what? So you got to work something in
It
coordinate.
was working before you got there, bro.
Yeah. You know damn well it was going.
I don't know, but it was working.
No, but and again, these are the questions you need to ask, and also going to get the connectors and the whole blah blah blah. So that's why I always, when I hear that, I as well make custom wires. We make custom wires. I agree.
well, I
But
think
there is something to say about buying their finished wires when you start understanding what the delta is to you doing it full cost into you using their wires, and you may find it cheaper. They will have custom IC power cables of various lengths.
yeah, I think a lot has changed over the years because so much stuff now has an IEC plug on it. All the other stuff, all the Sony pieces, all that consumer stuff, that was hardwired.
Yeah, and once you, and again, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the more.
Yeah, but you got 15, 20 pieces with 6-foot cords that are going 18 inches. You got a lot of dog bones.
Yeah, once you cut a hardwired cord, you have no warranty.
Correct.
Yeah. Once you touch it and you cut that cord, that especially if it's hardwired, you touch that wire, you bought it. That's it. It's over. Yeah,
But
there's
more
no-
and more stuff is having the IEC on it. And we even made that push to all the power.
Yeah, all the power now that we're coming out with it's all IEC. Like even our UPSs are now IEC, so
Yeah. So
And they're not the same.
That makes it a lot easier.
Makes it a lot easier.
there you go.
Yeah.
So
Anything else?
guys, I want everybody, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Hope you guys got something out of it. I know it was great conversations.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about how many people ground their racks. Have you ever heard of? Oh, you ground the rack. Wow, the IT guy too. Yeah, he's
You got to.
Well, you have to.
The stuff costs more than you need. Really. Yes.
I don't know where you go. Not in my house, buddy. I don't know. I mean, it's all right though.
There's also a lot more inspectors looking around, got eyes on you guys
I've seen that
versus residential.
at the bottom is a screw
Yes.
for grounding.
Oh,
The grounding
yes.
screw on the bottom.
And you'll see that with their thing,
Try to.
both grounding and bonding.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. All their products has a location, so you can all the various panels and everything. Now, grounding.
Yeah, that's for
I
the
am
bonding.
A huge advocate. You heard the guy saying we ground every single device, and I've had people say, "Tell me something it does. If grounding is real, and you need to do that. Show me something where it matters." You ever touch a touchscreen twice, and you're like, "Wait, I touched that." That's grounding. Feel free to call the manufacturer and ask him if I'm full of shit. He'll tell you no.
What do you mean?
Like, you ever touch a touchscreen? You say, "I touched that button." It's like, "Wait, I touched that button. It didn't work."
Okay.
Ground out the switch. If you're providing power to that touchscreen, watch it become more responsive to your touch.
Really?
Yup. And you will see that every manufacturer will tell you about the situation. Grounding is important. The potential between all the equipment should be all equal. You should, and the equipment will actually even tell you. Some of the pictures you saw, there'll be little nut areas that'll have a little mark, and it'll show you grab here.
It's actually
Grab-
code. Yeah, if you're UL, you have to call that out.
Oh yeah, right down here. You can see it on the bottom of that. At one point you want to look, you'll see, and it has this little mark. Most devices will have that mark. Now we use a device like this. They have a very cool bus plate that you can put in there, all copper that you can connect to. We use a device like this, and we put a connecting block on the bottom and just home run each device back to this block and throw a big ground into it. Usually the electrician, gives me something, and that is how we do it. And I cannot tell you the amount of service calls that has prevented. This is probably one of the things that has fundamentally changed things in my business for me.
Can you just plug like a 3-prong outlet? Is that what you do? You use
No.
the grounding part of it?
No,
So how do you
not
ground?
at all. I run a wire to the exterior of it to a very purposeful piece on it, and I ground that from a wire to here.
A lot of the equipment will
Outside
have a
of-
ground stud on the back or an
No,
outlet
I mean,
And
location.
how you grounded this to
How you so
the room?
that like
The wire goes into this. No, you screw it down.
where do you get the wire?
Okay.
Where you
Grounding process.
I know all. You only have outlet. Where you gotta run this?
I
Yeah.
push this to here,
Yeah.
and then I get the electrician to give me a clean ground.
Where
Not
do you
all,
get it from?
wherever they need to grab it from. May it be from somewhere from the ground, maybe adding a ground from somewhere. That's why it's important to have very good electrical friends. Stellman is a spectacular company. Yeah, they.
Reconstruction, you gotta tell your electrician I wanna ground.
Yeah.
Yup, pre-construction, but even after the fact, because we'll go in those high rises and we'll be somewhere cool and we need something, again, having the appropriate person. We as low voltage people have to be very careful not to tread lines we're not supposed to be touching. It's very easy to get ourselves into trouble. It's important to have it, and I'm telling you, have an electrician will make you money. They have made me money as I've made them money. It's been a very good relationship. You should find one. Sparky's a cool friend. But again, adding a cool grounding block, interconnecting all the equipment, even the rack, all the components to each other. This will make the ground potential the same amongst everything. This, I'm telling you, will be the one. I stress this more than anything. Will take out more weird gremlins out of your system than you ever see.
All devices.
Everything.
A grounding. They all have a
Most.
grounding?
Most. Apple
Most of
TV.
them have a screw. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it doesn't have.
Yeah, there
What
will
do you-
be some
how do you ground
annoying weird devices. That is just what
How
it
do you
is.
ground it?
You can't.
Oh, you don't do it.
Unless open it up, you
It has
can't.
a
You
plastic
can't
So let's say all rack mounted.
Most
rack mounted.
gear will give you something. But again,
All
like
mounted.
everything, they'll make a liar out of you. Say everything. So most gear.
gear in metal chassis.
Yeah. And most gear has a metal, but they will also. It's important to talk to your provider. Like audio control doesn't have an exact ground nut in the back of it, and their IC goes in. It doesn't actually even have. It's only 2-prong. It has no ground thing. Now, I didn't want to assume. Usually, I would just grab from a screw. So what I do, I call the senior engineer. I said, please tell me about the design of the entire preamp and where is the best grounding place.
Wow.
Now, you see that? We can sit there in silence and bitch about it, or you can become friends with the people. Instead of talking shit about them with our friends, we can talk shit about them to their face, and it's much cooler.
We love that
I mean,
better.
like, no, but also,
Potentially hours of tech support that you could have figured out.
Yeah.
Make the investment upfront.
Call, yeah.
Make the call, take the time,
Of course.
and then everything will go much.
and those relationships, they go. They got wheels, they got legs of their own. They bring you to cool and fascinating places, but you have to be engaged. You have to be involved to fix the problem, and it's all our responsibilities. And honestly, the biggest takeaway from all this stuff is that I stress to everybody is like, hey, the biggest tool is the people next to you, us right here, each other. We are the biggest things that can help each other. I got where I am because people were nice enough to help me. They helped me because I engaged them. Engage your brother next to you, your sister next to you, because we are here. We can help each other, and there are so many benefits. I'm telling you. Even after this, Everyone should take each other's. I will be the first one to be like, hey, can I have your card? Because I do want to engage. I do. I'm telling you, business is made that way. There are a lot of opportunities, and there are more if we work together. All right.
Cool.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think of the class? So now that we like it,
We need a hands-on next.
we're gonna do more of these.
Yeah, hands on next. We'll bring you in. We'll get a couple of racks. We'll say we're gonna put together this gear. Give a couple. You put what, like a team of 4 per rack? You guys put a rack
Yeah,
together?
you do. Yeah, 3 to 4 per rack. Basically, what you do is you go through those things, and then we give you a scenario. I got this cable. I need to run it from here to here, and I give you some stuff. Here's this small device that needs to be mounted.
Yeah.
I need to do that, right? That's
More than 2 hours.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
that's typically a 4 to 6 hour.
Would
It's,
you guys be interested in a private, like, place to chat and communicate with each other? Like, we did it on Facebook or a social media platform. What would be your platform of choice?
What's up, guy?
What's that?
What's that? What's that?
What's
What else? What's up?
We'll put something together and we'll contact you guys with the information.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you ask a question, just text each other. Everybody can give advice.
And even questions, advice. You're not a dealer for something, you're looking for a dealer. New products that are coming out, like shit. We invented our own Crestron processor to make it easier for anyone to deploy Crestron. And we're working with other dealers. See, these are opportunities. And think about it. Me sharing with you allows me to hopefully build with you. We should build 2 ways. We should all tell each other, here are the things that I'm trying to do. We may find that we're pieces to one another.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much. I really appreciate everybody coming down.
Signed up with us?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Guys, have business
Thanks,
cards.
appreciate it.
We're having calls on it. You can set this up on WhatsApp.